Cindy, I didn't have a chance to check, but I got a couple of messages that people were confused because it's the wrong date on the website. Does anyone know what I'm referring to? I just
No.
got a message.
Huh.
Dr. Leclerc, do you know? I haven't checked the website, but there's confusion with parents in town.
You're the first that said something to me.
And we have 60 people, so most people must have gotten it okay.
It did say the 25th, not the 23rd.
Yeah, if you look at the first page of meeting agendas, this is Jared Collenbeck. It says the 25th. You have to click to page 2 to get to the one on the 23rd. That may be the point of confusion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the 25th, there is a virtual town hall meeting, and we did post that as a meeting. Since school committee will be there, so legally we have to post it.
What it sounds like needs to happen is that it's all listed as school committee. And so those need to be probably clarified when they're being listed up there as whatever subcommittee or event of the school committee is being actually posted.
Agreed.
Okay, so I think everybody that we have is here. And it is 6:01. So I know I let the mayor in, so I think we're in good shape. So hold on, I just changed my papers. All right, so I'm gonna ask for a roll call to start this meeting. Jonathan?
Jonathan Smith here.
Lori?
Laurie Garcia here.
Marissa?
Marissa Carreri here.
Shannon?
Shannon Dunham here.
Maren? I know
Sorry,
you-
Maren Goldstein here.
And Mayor LaChapelle?
Mary LaChapelle here.
And Cynthia Kwasinski here. So welcome. This is the February 23rd school committee meeting. And we just found out that there was a couple of little glitches in how it got posted on the main website. So apologies. And it looks like quite a few people were able to make it. So I'm glad for that. So do we have announcements, Dr. Leclerc?
We do. I have quite a few, so let me just get through them. Classes resumed this week for some students, and we're thrilled to report that we have many happy young people attending classes. And I think there have been some pictures posted on Facebook for people. Center Pepin wants to let everyone know that there is a school council meeting this coming Monday, March 1st. And the Center Pepin administration will be offering another session of couch conversations on Thursday, March 11th from 6:30 to 7:30. Principal Jill Pasquini Torchia and Assistant Principal Andrea McCallum will talk a little bit about, in our social emotional learning team, will welcome families to discuss building resiliency in children. At all of our elementary schools, our music teachers, Mr. Monty and Ms. Cloutier, are excited to offer both the 3rd and 4th grade students an opportunity to sing in a video with the song This Little Light of Mine for the Children's Advocacy Center of Hampshire County, who is kicking off in April an awareness event and has requested Easthampton students create a music video to promote the Luminary event in April. White Brook administration will be doing a parent forum for families on Wednesday, March 3rd from 6 to 7 p.m. to discuss a return to school plan and procedures. At the high school, school administration will hold Zoom town hall sessions for all caregivers and students. Last names A through L will be Wednesday, the 24th of February from 6:30 to 7:30. Last names M through Z will be Thursday, the 25th from 5:30 to 6:30. Easthampton High School is also inviting all 9th grade students and caregivers to come for in-person tours and orientation sessions during the week of March 1st. and that will be scheduled out alphabetically. You can check the high school for more information on that. Help Easthampton Act locally. It's called Heal Easthampton, is a website funded by the Easthampton Learning Foundation, ELF, to connect Easthampton families in the community with district resources. The page centralizes information regarding food access, internet access, technology support, mental health support, and COVID-19 information in many languages. It also includes contact information for people and organizations that can provide additional assistance during this time. It will go live this week. I think it will be ready to go live tomorrow. And the public web address will be www.healeasthampton, HEAL, easthampton.com. And we'll do a presentation on that in an upcoming meeting. Finally, I'll be hosting a virtual town hall this Thursday evening to discuss COVID questions and our return to school for parents and caregivers. It's an interactive question and answer opportunity. The meeting will be recorded for any families that are unable to attend. You'll be able to find information on the district website under the COVID tab. And that is all for now.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Marissa, do we have correspondence?
Yes, we do. So I've organized these by content. The first came from A Knee Is Not Enough, issuing a report card to the district to identify areas where they're seeking further information and oversight, specifically about internet access and free school lunches. And then additionally, we had a set of correspondence that all was requesting that we reconsider the school committee's previous vote on the girls and boys basketball season, requesting that we approve the fall 2 season for these teams. So all of this correspondence was under that category. Kristen Downey, writing as a parent of 2 daughters in the district. Meg Cullenbach, writing as a parent and mental health professional at a pediatric practice. And that correspondence also included a petition signed by 628 people in support of the vote, or of a reconsideration of the vote, I should say. Matthew Morse, writing as a parent. Jeremy Raposa, writing as a professional engineer for mechanical engineering and a parent. Veronica Raposa, writing as a member of the girls basketball team. Earl Raymond, writing as a parent. Christina Belfaki, requesting approval of girls basketball team. Samir Goddard, writing as a member of the boys basketball team. Margaret Barr, writing as a student. Jaden Ortiz, writing as a member of the boys basketball team. Gabriel Raposa, writing as a member of the boys basketball team. Gabe Cullenbach, writing as the senior captain of the boys basketball team. And Mateo Navarro, writing as a member of the boys basketball team. So that is our correspondence for this week.
Thank you. Our next meeting will be March 9th, 2021. And now we're going to open it up to public speak. I'm going to ask that you limit to 3 minutes and you state your name and where you live. Okay, so I see Jared. And I'm going to be scrolling through. So if you raise your hand, I may not see you, but I will keep scrolling through. Jared, I see you. So we're going to open up with you first. So you want to make sure that you raise your hand some way so that I can see you. All right, go ahead, Jared.
Well, I'm actually Jared's oldest son, Sam. So I kind of like him reading a letter representing the former players on the team. So as a former member of the Easthampton basketball team and an active supporter of the current team, we felt it's extremely important to share our thoughts about the recent decision to cancel the 2021 season. For many of us, basketball was more than a sport. It was an outlet, a place where we could come together and forget the many stresses and troubles of our day-to-day life. When we stepped on that court, whether it was for a game, practice, or a 10-minute shoot around after school, all of our problems seemed to go away. Basketball captured our attention completely, testing every emotion, both good and bad, helping us become the men we are today. Each day was a new lesson, a new problem, both for the individual and the team. Without a shadow of a doubt, each player that stepped foot on the Easthampton basketball court left a better person, more equipped to tackle the challenges of life. We ask that you do not take away this opportunity for these young men to grow and flourish into the people Easthampton High aims to produce. We ask that each of you reading this letter to think back to a time in your life where you were given some opportunity to work exceptionally hard for something that made you not only put in a lot of time, but required real sacrifice and true dedication. We want you now to imagine that opportunity, whatever it may be, being taken away from you. The reality of this situation is, for the seniors on the team, this season is their last chance to play a high school sport. No matter how bad they feel, how hard they wish, or how hard they try, after this year, they will never be able to play a high school sport again. This season is some players' last chance to showcase their extreme dedication to their craft and validate all their hard work and time they've put in. We understand that during this pandemic, issues and concerns have arisen that extend beyond school and sports. We can only imagine the many layers and various factors that were taken into account in order to make your decision. With that being said, we are sure that you can understand the frustration of many players around this decision. The reality of the situation is, for many of these players, if they just played on a different team or played a different sport or went to a different school in the area, then they'd be able to showcase their remarkable hard work and dedication for the game they love. We ask that you please reconsider your decision. Thank you very much.
Okay. So Gabe?
Yeah, hello. I also wanted to speak on this, being a senior, the only senior that's been going to the trainings on our team, and the captain. I thought it was really important that I could come out here and talk to all of you. I did send a letter, but I wanted to speak again. My name is Gabe Callenbach, and I'm a senior captain on the EHS basketball team. Like I said in my letter to you all, me and my teammates are very upset with your decision, and I especially am, given this is my last season. I really hope you all listen to this with an open mind, because when I sent an email regarding the decision, the response I received pretty much said that our COVID team didn't approve games, and that's the end of it. But with that answer, none of our questions have been answered, and it still doesn't make sense to any of us. All my points about the mental health of students and the impact I want to leave with the season were disregarded. What we have been allowed to do does not really allow us to have a team atmosphere. Don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful that you allowed us to play and that we are able to play right now. We'll practice. But the distance practicing with no contact just kind of continues this isolation we're all feeling, because life still isn't the same. And it erases a lot of the bonding and family aspects of the basketball team that we all love so much, and would also really help everyone right now. These times are hard for all of us, and anyone that has played on a team before knows how much it can help. A team supports you, helps you, and makes us feel valued and makes us feel that we have a purpose. Medical professionals and COVID teams from all around, locally and nationally, have found ways to allow play and make basketball safe. So it isn't clear to us why we can't. What makes our COVID team so much different that they can't approve play while towns in the same situation that we are can? Also, you approve football to be played, which has more guaranteed contact than basketball. You allow us to practice inside, so clearly being indoors isn't holding it back. And football is allowed to play, so contact doesn't restrict play either. This is why we don't understand the decision. 10 players competing in a gym with a mask on, with no spectators, cannot be more of a risk than full contact football. And towns around us have proved that basketball can work, given that games have been going on every week and they're live streamed and we can all only just sit back and watch them. Earlier today, I read a 10-page PDF with rules and modifications that the MIA specifically put out to make basketball safe and make games possible all around the state. They put this out for a reason, and our program is 100% dedicated enough to follow all rules with no problem. And I can promise you that we just want to play. I hope you can reconsider your decision, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Linda B?
Okay, go ahead.
Well, actually, tonight it's Dan B, not Linda B. So, my name is Dan Broadhurst. I live in Easthampton. My daughter is a member of the class of 2021. When she became a senior, she was on top of the world. All of her and her classmates' hard work had finally paid off. But now, a year of being locked down, she is depressed and confused. left wondering why, with all the positive data out there, our schools are still in lockdown and need to be opened up. Nationally, high school age children are suffering. Depression is up 75%. 1 of 4 students have had suicidal thoughts. Locally, your continual failures on this handling of this situation is causing more damage to our students than any virus ever will. On January 17th, Principal Evans had an article in the Gazette. He mentioned excused absences. The fall of 2019, there was roughly 200. The fall of 2020, there was 1,000. Students failing at least one class in 2019 was at 6%. Now that number is up to 16%. And all this over a virus with a 99.997 survival rate in high school age students. So with all this being said, open our schools up full time, not a few hours a day, every other week. That only will continue to show that you and your experts do not want what is best for our students. I'm also hoping that our class of 2021 will not be forgotten about. I hope you're not going to simply put their diplomas in the mail, and that is nothing more to them than a slap in the face. Give them a proper send-off. Show them all their hard work has not gone unnoticed. Give them what they deserve and have worked so hard for, a proper graduation that they will remember for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt M.
Hi, guys. So I sent you the letter already due to the 3-minute here. I'm going to try to cut it down a little bit. I just wanted to talk a little bit about my daughter. She's a sophomore at Easthampton High School in the sport she plays. I'm going to skip the first couple paragraphs, but without question, my daughter's passion is basketball. She spends countless hours in the gym with her personal basketball trainers, her multiple teams, or just by herself trying to better herself. She has set personal goals when it comes to her high school career, and she has intentions to play basketball in college. She made the varsity team as a freshman and helped the Eagles to the playoffs for the first time in many years. She was selected to the All-Western Mass team and also selected to the Hampshire Gazette All-Star team. For these reasons and so much more, it is important that you allow the basketball season to advance starting in March. It's important to note that Lauren and other students have already been participating in basketball competitively since last March. She has also been playing with a team called B2L Basketball at a Waltham, Mass. Ever since Easthampton has denied their students the opportunity to play. I'm not sure why the rules are different for Easthampton than they are for the rest of the entire state. She has played roughly 20 games against 15 different cities throughout this state since November of 2020, all with 0 cases reported among any players, coaches, or staff. This is because of the rigorous protocols put in place by the Governor's Advisory Council. And I know we can do the same here in Easthampton. Effective August 17th, 2020, the Baker administration released a workplace safety and reopening plan. The plan was approved by the Governor's Reopening Advisory Board. This board consists of 19 members. One of them is the Commissioner of the Mass Department of Public Health, and also this board includes 4 medical doctors. This reopening plan states as follows. Phase 3, Step 1, Level 3 competitions, inter-team games, meets, matches, races, etc. can be played by higher risk sports as long as minimum modifications of play are set. As of today, minimum modifications have been established by the MIAA, which has a 21-member board consisting of athletic directors, principals, and superintendents. The MIAA has also added a COVID task force, which includes athletic directors, principals, an employee from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and again, a medical doctor. With all due respect, there are no medical doctors on the Easthampton School Committee. Kids are playing basketball all around our entire state and are doing so per the governor's orders and MIA modifications. with direct input from epidemiologists and medical doctors. Easthampton should be no different, especially because we are currently in the yellow. And even Williston is playing basketball 2 blocks away from the high school. The one last suggestion that I would like to talk about is if you do still have reservations about letting the students play, you have the power to allow basketball to be played, but only allow it without spectators, if you so choose. I have recently been to a few tournaments, a few of which don't allow spectators. My suggestion would be to have a dedicated person to live stream the games on a mobile device for spectators to watch at home. I would not only volunteer my time and effort for this task, but I would also donate money to purchase any equipment needed to make this possible. I am begging you to consider a vote tonight to allow not only my daughter, begging you tonight to vote to allow not only my daughter to play, but all of the young boys and girls to participate in the upcoming Fall 2 season, which includes basketball. These kids are already practicing together and also getting COVID tested weekly. Only those students who test negative are participating, which is a great start. We have an opportunity to allow a little piece of normalcy to our students' lives during these uncertain times, all while being safe. Please vote yes tonight and allow our students to play basketball. Not doing so would be a great disservice to our kids and our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mateo?
Hello, my name is Mateo Navarro. I'm a sophomore and I've played on the high school basketball team last year, and I was hoping to play this year. And I would just like to kindly ask for all of your reconsideration to allow the boys and girls basketball to move on to safe competitive season. Basketball is more than a game to all of us players, and anyone who has played a high school sport knows how much it can mean to them. It improves our mental health, and with the remote classes that we're going through now, it puts a lot of stress on us.
Mateo, hold on for a minute. Mateo, Mateo, can you hear me?
Seniors' last chance to play. Yeah, I can.
Okay, so your voice is freezing. I can call on 2 other people, and if you get off and come back on, it might clear up the problem. So I promise I'll take 1 more person, log off, we'll let you back in, and then we'll call you back, okay? Because we can't hear you.
With his camera off, he'll be fine.
Okay, Mateo, can try now.
All right, is this better?
Yeah,
Yes.
that is better. Good. All right.
Where did you guys hear last?
Very little of anything.
Okay, I'll start over.
Okay.
So I would just like to kindly ask for all your reconsideration to allow the boys and girls basketball team to move on with a safe competitive season. Basketball is more than a game to all of us players, and anyone who has played a high school sport knows how much it can mean to someone. In addition to that, with the times we're going through now, our remote classes put a lot of stress on us, and with basketball and socialization, it can improve our mental health a lot. To add on to that, seniors, this is their last chance to play a high school sport, and for those who hope to pursue a college career in basketball, it might be their last chance to get notified at college. I'm confident that with a safe plan, we can go forward and have a safe competitive season. And I could go on, but I already put in my email, so I asked nicely, please let us play. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. So Meg, calling back.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much. And first of all, I just want to start by thanking you all for being part of our school committee. I can't imagine what it's like that time to dedicate to it. And then in a pandemic, I just want to say I really appreciate all you guys are doing and the thoughtfulness around the decisions that you make. I do want to read what I wrote because I think it's important, and I'm writing as a parent. And for those of you who don't know, I have 3 kids in Easthampton, and then I'm also the mental health, one of the mental health providers for Northampton area pediatrics. And I'm speaking tonight to request that the school committee reverse the decision about the 2021 high school basketball season. There are many schools and districts that have determined that basketball is a sport that can be played using COVID guidelines and rule modification. Basketball should fall in line with the school board's past decision to let other sports play in the district. The MIAA has been working to create COVID modifications and rules to the game of basketball in order to promote safer play. I would like to see the school committee shift its conversation from not if basketball can play, but to how basketball can play this season in Easthampton. The decision of whether or not high school students play basketball is a decision of risk, but the state has already done the work and research to help decrease COVID risk. We have tracing, contact tracing, masking, distancing, testing, and now immunizations going on regularly in the community. The risk that I don't believe the school committee is weighing is the mental health risk when athletes are not allowed to play. I have a senior who has built his identity around basketball his 4 years at EHS. And it's not about the points he scores, but rather about his connection, leading his peers, tutoring younger students in math so they can play, bringing morale up when they are down, inspiring teammates to work hard even when times are tough. And times are tough, and they're working hard, to try to play. It is how he's given back to his community, and you have teams of athletes who want to continue to give back to their community if you let them. As a mental health professional at a pediatric practice, I work with hundreds of children and adolescents each year. I know firsthand how lives have been turned upside down and our young population are more depressed, socially isolated, and anxious than ever before. It is our job to help them in safe ways. Our basketball players watch other athletes in town play, and a state committee has determined guidelines and restrictions so they can play. So I want the committee to ask themselves, why not basketball? Basketball players need to play too. They need to continue their development as student athletes and leaders in the school. I'm looking forward to the moment, hopefully this winter in my living room, cheering on our basketball teams, feeling school pride, and seeing greater wholeness in these students, even in these difficult COVID times. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Rena?
Hello. My name is Rena Damon. I'm a junior at Easthampton High School, and I'm really looking forward to the return to the school in a couple of weeks. It's important to me to see my teachers and friends in person. I'm also a student athlete, and I've played volleyball and basketball since my freshman year at EHS. And being a part of a team and representing EHS has been an important part of my high school experience, and one that I hope to continue this year. I am here tonight in support of the Fall 2 girls and basketball season. We have been practicing within the guidelines, and we all have weekly conducted testing on our own time. In addition, this is voluntary, and I respect the choices of my teammates and others. I'm asking you to reconsider and give those of us who wish to play a chance. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Gallagher?
Hello, I'm Mike Gallagher. I live in Holyoke, and my son Jonathan goes to your school on school choice. He's a sophomore at Easthampton High School, and his brother Michael Brown graduated last year. And, one of the best things that's happened from us being allowed to join your community via your school system has been my son's playing on your sports teams. Jonathan played for your junior varsity baseball team when he was in 8th grade at Whitebrook Middle School, and Michael played 2 years of junior varsity at Easthampton High on basketball and 2 years on the varsity team. And it is your sports system and your community has been a great benefit to us, and we really want to see it ongoing and continue. Jonathan is really a kid that needs to expend the energy, and he needs the socialization that comes with playing the sports with his teammates. He's made a lot of friends in Easthampton as a result of playing sports there. And I'm not going to get into all the details of every reason why it's been safe for other communities in the state guidelines and everything, because many before me have already stated that. I just hope that you strongly are considering listening to what everybody's asking you tonight, and that you have come into this meeting tonight with an open mind, and that you do not already have a predetermined outcome in your minds without listening to the opinion of those who are here tonight speaking to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jaden?
Hello, my name is Jaden Ortiz. I am a student at Easthampton High School and I live in Easthampton. I'm also a part of the boys basketball team, and I wanted to talk today because I believe that we should have a season. All of us that participate work year round, and my teammates are some of the most dedicated people I've ever seen. All we want is a fair chance to play. And I believe that the decision to not have a basketball season should be reconsidered. Thank you.
Thank you. Samir? Did I say that right?
Yes. Hi, my name is Samir, and I'm a player for the Easthampton basketball team at EHS. And I got the pleasure to play for 1 year. I'm a sophomore last year, and I would kindly ask for you guys to please reconsider your decision to not have a season, because for about 4 or 5 years, basketball has been my favorite sport. It's brought me nothing but happiness, nothing but confidence, and it's honestly made me a better person. And playing with my teammates gives me a certain kind of happiness that I've honestly never felt. And all of my coaches that I've ever have been the most supportive people. And all the seasons that I've ever played, I've just been more confident. And I'm just asking that you guys please reconsider, because it gives us an opportunity to do something that we really can't right now. It's feel happy, do something that we usually do, not during this pandemic. And it just gives us some sort of normalcy that we can't really feel right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I just looked through. It appears as though there is no one else. I'm going to check through one more time. If you want to talk, now is the time, because I am about to close public speak. This is my last scroll through. All right, we are going to close public speak. Okay, thank you for everyone who spoke. So now we are on subcommittee updates. Can we start with policy?
We have not met, and I have not seen any updates on the MASC site.
Okay. And finance?
Yep, Finance Committee met. We've been starting to look at the budget developing for FY 2022. We obviously are working off of the negative 2.5% budget restriction that has been forwarded to us by the mayor, and we are working diligently to try to find that ability to be able to do that without having to do any layoffs or any changing in staff. So we're working towards that. The budgets so far are on track as best we can so far, and then we'll start to be able to look further into them in the coming weeks. But so far we've been reviewed the elementary schools and the high school, middle school budgets. So those budgets are on track. We're looking to be able to do what we need to do given the different restrictions.
Thank you. How about a collaborative update?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I could just comment, I have a question. What school committee meeting do you think, or maybe Superintendent Leclerc knows, that it'll come before the whole school committee for vote on the budget?
We have that date.
That'll
Maren?
be that'll be the second school committee in March. So I think that's
Okay.
23rd.
Yeah, I think it's the 23rd.
Yeah, all right. Thank you. And also I had put an email forward to the superintendent asking the school committee to consider for next fiscal year to change their budget timeline to come within the other with all the departments. It would be very helpful.
Could you say that one more time? You've asked.
So well, yeah. So I just wanted to I've asked Superintendent Leclerc to recalibrate the school budget process and final vote, so it falls in line with the rest of the departments, and she just gave me a thumbs up. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. All righty. Collaborative, Jonathan?
Sure. So I'll remind you that we are on track to continue with the executive director search. Screening is, I believe, underway, and we will be scheduling interviews later on in March. I want to throw out a shout out to the collaborative for a lot of work that they've done to help advocate for or on behalf of our educators being of a higher priority in terms of vaccinations. And I guess I would just hearing, many of the comments and concerns regarding students' health. I'll reiterate something I mentioned at our last meeting, which is that the biannual SPIFFy surveys are going to be happening in the coming months. And I think, that's going to be an extremely informative and valuable data source as we think about how to support what is undoubtedly going to be, or what has undoubtedly been a traumatic experience for our students. And, we're going to need to think real hard about supporting them regardless of what activities are available now. They're going to need our help in the future, and I look forward to seeing that data to help us do so.
Thank you. COVID response update?
Yes, before I just give a very brief update, because Dr. Leclerc will be speaking to what we discussed yesterday. I would like to tell everybody here tonight, because so many people are new to our school committee meetings, and I know that you're very concerned about how we make our decisions. So I want to reiterate who is on our COVID response team. We are so very fortunate, because I don't know of any other district in this Commonwealth that has the medical professionals that we do, who sit and meet weekly to discuss all of these health concerns during this pandemic. So we have our head of public health. We have the new nurse who was hired by the city to do the contact tracing and many other things, including working with us on the metrics. So she is the district's public health nurse. We have the two nurses who are in this school department, and we have a pediatrician. So those are our healthcare professionals, but on top of everyone's specialties, I would like to once again recognize an epidemiologist, Megan Harvey, who has volunteered her time, who is a professor of epidemiology, and she meets with us weekly as well. And for those of you who don't know what an epidemiologist does, that is the science about the spread of disease. I don't know if I'm giving the exact definition. So for all of our concerned citizens who write and tell us that we don't have any doctors on our school committee, I'm so fortunate to be the school committee member to sit weekly with this group of professionals who guide our decisions. And I would like to also repeat that the MIAA only has one doctor. So I believe we have a lot more health professionals working on our team in the city of Easthampton, and we're so fortunate for that. So as I said, Dr. Leclerc will be talking about what we discussed in a very lengthy and comprehensive meeting yesterday when we discussed the exact metrics and the charts that we use to determine our school reentry, which is our most important need right now to get our students back in school. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have listed a superintendent contract update. I'm just going to announce that we are updating the contract. We've come to an agreement with Dr. Leclerc, and I expect that we will have the contract ready for signature tomorrow or Thursday, and we will be all set. So I'm looking forward to having that signed. So now we're time for the superintendent update. And I have allowed sharing, so you should be all set.
Thank you. Let me just start my slideshow. Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So tonight I have been asked to give an update on several areas. So I've just put one presentation together that will encompass all of the items under my section. So this is our return to school update. And as I mentioned in my announcements, we are thrilled to finally have students back inside of every single one of our school buildings. And I hope it continues. I hope it grows and grows and grows every week. So let me start by discussing the metrics in the student return information. So I did hear, as some other folks on the school committee heard, that there were questions around our metrics. So just reminding everyone, the school committee voted at the last meeting to have the marker for a return of special populations be 35 cases per 100,000, and the marker for students to return to hybrid for grades 2 through 12 to be 30 cases per 100,000. So how do we know if we're there? Are we there? Where are we? What are we using for metrics? All of those questions seem to be circling around. So as I've attributed multiple times, we use a lot of resources. Obviously, we don't have 100,000 people living in Easthampton, so it is a formula that is weighted. So we met yesterday as the COVID advisory team to dive into this a little bit more closely to provide a recommendation to this committee. They provided the recommendation to me, and I'm bringing it forward to you. For the cases that are listed here, the COVID response committee looked at the CDC guidance, the most recent CDC guidance, which articulates using city and county 7-day averages. So we thought, then let's keep with that metric, because we feel as though the CDC is providing guidance that is steeped in science and reviewed by peers. So the COVID response team wanted to move to Clark City website, and we will link it on our school district website, and they will provide the 7-day average for the city, and they will provide the 7-day average for the county. And so the medical professionals that know where to pull that data and how to cull it into the formula will do that for us. And we will provide a link to that so that members of our school community can see that information on a weekly basis. They can see it in real time. And it is just, I want to clarify for people, the practice will be, and we reviewed this again in our COVID response team, if either the city or the county metric bumps up to, starts going on an upward trend or goes over either one of these thresholds, That will be a reason for the COVID response team to meet and discuss the metrics and look more closely at the data. It will not be a reason to close our doors immediately. It will not be a reason to pause, not unless we determine that it is necessary to pause. So the COVID response team will look at the data and make a recommendation to me. I will then report out to the school community if there's a metric that we're concerned about and we're watching, what the advice from the COVID response team is and how we'll proceed. And that may be we'll continue on, school will continue on, or it might be that we have to pause. But I hope that that information clarifies a little bit the process that we're looking to undertake. And right now, the metrics in Easthampton are well below both of the thresholds listed on this document. So we feel as though in our, I think it's fair to say, and we've talked with our city health folks a lot in the past 2 days, the trend is in a downward scope. So people have been listening in Easthampton and the number is on a downward trend. So we feel very confident about the numbers this week. And I'll be happy to share them out once we get that link set up with the city for the dashboard. I can share that out with the community in a message. So I will pause there in case Laurie wants to add anything or if anyone has a question.
Superintendent, I have a question.
Yes.
So the metrics that we're talking about, and thank you for the thorough presentation. Are there separate metrics or consideration for in-person sports or extracurricular activities like theater?
There are not. The restrictions around things like sports come from the MIAA and come from DESE, which we have that guidance, and around theater, vocal performances, those are all guidance documents that come from the Department of Education or from the MIAA in the case of sports.
Thank you.
Laurie?
We should also add that we did discuss the CDC guidelines that came out recently, which do clearly state that with the metrics that we have right now, we should just be focused on getting the students in the classroom and not on the extracurricular activities, including sports, with the numbers we have.
I just had printed up today the CDC guidelines, and their top paragraph is in-person instruction should be prioritized over extracurricular activities, including sports and school events, in order to minimize risk of transmission in schools and protect in-person learning.
Well, I will say that I believe when we had that conversation at the COVID advisory response team, that was during school vacation. The numbers have significantly dropped, and I'm not sure that that's still an accurate statement. We did not discuss sports at yesterday's COVID response team. So the metric has significantly shifted from last week. So I would need to look further into the accuracy of that statement.
Right, but not the CDC guideline recommendation.
No, but that's
just haven't had time to talk about it.
Document is a 38 page
Yeah.
document that has information. Yeah. So this is just a summary of what I just spoke about. Student numbers. I wanted to share out with you what's happening in our schools right now. So group one.
Dr. Leclerc, did you just skip a slide though? Because there was more information right there.
That's just a summary of what I just spoke to you about.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay. So group one, I'm defining here as the students that are in our buildings now today. our pre-K, K1, special populations, our special programs, and our ELs and our remote learning centers. We have 213 students currently in the district in-person hybrid and 94 remote of that group. Group 2, I'm defining as grades 2 through 12, which are projected to start on March 8th. As of yesterday, when I was putting the numbers in this slide, we had 628 students ready to come back in hybrid, 262 students remote, and we're still waiting to hear from 195 families in the district. So the admin assistants and various folks in the schools are leaving phone messages with families that we have not heard from either way. Either they're doing remote or hybrid. Transportation guidance. So new transportation guidance came out prior to the school vacation. Revisions were made to the original guidance that was set last summer based on data that demonstrates a significant air exchange on moving school buses with open windows. So to bring everyone back to our school classrooms, we're aiming for at least a 4 air exchange per hour rate. And school buses are demonstrated to have 21 to 43 air exchanges per hour. So that is one of the reasons that the guidance has been lifted, and as well as the proven effectiveness of masking. So I am coming to you tonight to talk a little bit about transportation because we're building our schedule for our students to return. We know that ventilation is important, and buses will be required to keep windows open at least 2 inches. In adverse weather conditions, every other window can be opened. And districts need to plan for rain by, keeping students they can put something up, but they're still going to be getting wet probably. And this will go with the messaging. I think I started it in one of the messages I sent to families. Be prepared for open windows on school buses and in classrooms. Send your students to school dressed warmly. They can wear a hat if they need to. This is all information that our administrators will be advocating for with families. For our plan, these are some of the things that are in process or we've already done. Surveying our ridership, modifying onboarding, pickup and drop-off protocols. There'll be seat assignments, health and safety protocols around masking, distancing, hygiene, etc. And all of these things are things that we have a plan for, that the bus company has a plan for. Our bus company works with other communities in the area that have been in school, so they are quite adapted to the procedures that we're going to be putting in place. We will have a process for putting students on a bus. They're not going to be able to sit wherever they want. We'll load up from the back going forward, and then students will exit from the front off the bus to the back so that we can keep the flow moving correctly. So these are all strategies that are going to be put in place. Now, we talked about this at the COVID response team yesterday with the expertise that we have in that group. We know that the old regulation from last summer was for a bus the size of our school district buses, where we normally fit 65 students on a bus. The original guidance last summer would restrict us to 21 students per bus. So that's about 1/3 of the bus could be filled. So we're looking for some flexibility around how many students we can put on a bus, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. We also talked with the COVID response team about flexibility with staggered schedules. For the educators on that committee, they understand that for us to provide a staggered schedule is not feasible. And the reason it's not feasible is because we have, for example, we have some high school teachers that are on our school committee right now. You have blocks in your day, or you have periods in your day. And if students arrive at 7:45 a.m. and then another group of students doesn't arrive for a half hour or 40 minutes, then that shifts your whole lesson. And then if on the other end, you have students that are departing at one time, and then another group of students departs at another time, when are teachers going to take their lunch? When are they going to take their prep? Because the way our schedule is structured, teachers have classes remotely in the afternoon. So they have to immediately rejigger to an afternoon schedule that's remote because of this half-day plan that we have. And the committee agreed yesterday that it was not their recommendation to stagger the schedule. They did understand that windows need to be open, and they advocate for that. So here are some of the things that we're looking for some clarity on this evening. And these are generated from some comments from the school committee in the past. So we're really trying to clarify as we build our bus schedule. Now, I think everyone here knows, we've discussed previously, we're legally obligated to transport students that live over 2 miles in grades K through 6. That's the state law. Okay, in Easthampton, our policy is to do a little bit more than that. So one of the questions, or one of the areas that we need clarification is, are we returning to the current school committee policy around transportation with mileage guidelines and fill the bus language? To remind everyone, the school committee policy says that we will transport K through 6 students above 1.5 miles and any student in grades 7 through 12 above 2 miles. And we would fill the bus by lowering mileage only with excess capacity. Well, we know that at this point in time, based on only having 1/3 capacity on a bus, we will never reach a fill the bus point in time, which I think most people understand, but we're getting a lot of calls around that because people are saying to us, well, we've always qualified for fill the bus in the past, and we've been coming to Easthampton schools for years. So I want to be clear with families about what the expectations are at this point. And then there are also families in the district that are requesting transportation that do not meet either the state guidelines or the school committee policy. So how do we deal with that? And so I'm looking for clarity on that, because the reality is we're going to have a difficult time getting a limited number of students on buses, because we're going to have so many requests. So we really need to think about being clear in what our practice is. So what I'm really looking for tonight is a recommendation or a guideline from you. And this is what I'm proposing. I would like to have the ability as a school district to put more than 21 students on a bus, but less than 65. I don't want to fill the bus, but I want to do what we can to accommodate those people that are eligible and absolutely need it, because we know that some people are eligible and don't need it. But I really want to meet the needs of those people that are eligible and really need it. And, you know, I don't know if I can even get to the next tier after that. So I'm open to pausing here and hearing some of your concerns. The COVID response team listened to some of these concerns yesterday and agreed that a range somewhere between 35 and 45 students on a bus seemed reasonable to them. And so that is the recommendation that I'm bringing to you tonight to open up the conversation.
Superintendent Leclerc.
Yes.
I'll just say that, thank you for trying to include as many people as possible, the students and families. We've heard a lot about this. And I'm in agreement with the COVID-19 advisory, school advisory, as well as your proposal to have 35 to 45 students on our buses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? So,
Can
yeah.
I was just going to ask a point of clarification. I believe on a previous slide, Dr. Leclerc, it said this one exactly. So why one child per seat per bench? Can you just tell me, does bench refer to, I guess, can you tell me what
Each
bench?
side, each
So
side.
a bench is both sides? Okay.
Yes,
Gotcha.
but also keep in mind that siblings are allowed to sit together.
Mhm.
So that increases our ability to add numbers.
Can I also ask you, so I'm assuming that masks are going to be required for the entire time they're on buses. Is there
Yes.
going to be any other adult other than the bus driver on those buses to sort of help maintain those requirements?
At this time, we do have some bus monitors on some vans, special transportation. We don't have any on the larger buses, but we are considering that depending on the number of students that we have that express interest in riding on the bus. So if the number is smaller, we may not have a monitor, but if we have closer to the 35 to 45 range, then we probably will seek to have another adult on the bus if we can find someone.
Yeah, it would be my recommendation to certainly include that. It seems that there's already enough going on for the bus driver to be able to pay attention to the driving and all of the other stuff going on that's normal, but with these sort of additional safety precautions that need to be sort of closely monitored, it does seem like that we should put forward having additional staff to be able to monitor and support proper safety on our buses.
And, the other thing that I'd like to just reiterate to people that are listening and to the committee, in a normal year, we would route the buses once in the summer. We've done it 4 times already this year because of, stop and starts, guidance changes on the bus transportation, that sort of thing. Now we're in it again. But I want to remind people that this will continuously change as the remainder of the school year goes on, because students that are going to start in remote may change their mind and decide they want to be included in hybrid at some point. And then do we need to make room for them on the bus? Also, there's, the commissioner had some comments today about bringing students back fully. I don't know where that's going, but, I just ask for families to have grace and patience as we go through this process. And we've said it a million times as a school committee and as a district leadership team, we need to be flexible and fluid as we're moving through this process. So we may start, at one point, and then we're going to build on that.
Dale is in charge of kind of managing our buses.
Yes.
And I see her hand raised. So was there
She's-
something
yep,
you
she's-
wanted to add?
Just some additional information relative to the point that Maren raised, and as the superintendent indicated, we haven't made a decision about monitors yet, but certainly are considering them. I wanted to let people know that with Durham's route manager, I had a conversation precisely about this issue, and they've been running routes in 2 other districts to a greater extent than we have in Easthampton this year. And she mentioned to me that they've had very, very good compliance in terms of the safety guidelines, social distancing, masks, et cetera, from students, that they've become very accustomed to doing that when they're out in public, and they've not had a lot of trouble. So one of the things I think will be important is measuring that risk against giving up a seat, depending on how many kids need a ride. And I just wanted to mention that.
Dale, I do have a quick question. Do you know the longest ride en route that there is? Do you know how many minutes that is? Any idea?
I would say we don't have, I would say the longest routes in Easthampton are about 45 minutes.
Okay.
That's off the top of my head, my memory of bus routes in the past.
Okay.
21 to 43 air exchanges per hour. So
Allison, I didn't hear you, Dr.
I
Leclerc.
said, as a reminder, with 21 to 43 air exchanges per hour on a bus.
I would also express support for that 45 students on the bus. And then, I'm interested in what we can do for families that don't meet either the state or district guidelines for offering busing. The policy subcommittee has wrestled with this problem for literally years and years, even in non-COVID times. How do we meet the needs of families who struggle to get their kids to school? We've really had trouble coming up with ways that we really could know to be fair and legal. And we have come up with some protocols around allowing families to make appeals to the superintendent, and then kind of giving the superintendent discretion to offer seats. I don't know if we have ideas, if we could talk about some ideas for ways to help kids get to the buildings.
Right. And I would just preface those comments by indicating that we don't have a lot of flexibility during a normal school year when we have full buses. We only have 7 buses. So we don't have, in a good year, we don't have the ability to agree to a lot of the appeals that are made. And it's because we're very limited by the number of buses that we have. And my concern about acknowledging or approving appeals now is if I give a seat to a student that for example, lives a mile away from school, so they don't meet either the state or the school district guidance or policy, but they live a mile away and their parents are appealing for them to get a ride. What happens a month from now or 2 months from now when I have more students that want to come in person and they are eligible? Do I then have to kick somebody off the bus? So it's going to put me in a tough spot. And so I'm leery about a lot of that, and how do we make that work? So that's another kind of monkey wrench in it, if you will.
Do you have an idea right now if you were putting 35 to 45 kids on a bus right now with the 213 and 628, how many kids are actually needing to take a bus and wanting to take a bus? Do you have a number?
Dale is the person that has the closest amount of information on that. Dale, I don't know if you can put Dale does not have any final numbers, but Dale has been collecting information from the administrator. So I don't know if she wants to make any comment.
Sure. With the guideline that's being discussed right now, I feel fairly confident that we would be able to offer a seat to every student who is eligible by the current policy
School committee policy.
and wishes to ride the bus. But the caveat with that, well, there are two. One is that there are families we've not heard from. And the other is that as the spring goes on, there could be more students who want to ride the bus and are eligible by policy. And there could be more kids who return to school and would want to ride the bus. So I think for March 8th, we've got it covered, but going forward is the concern.
And it may be, you know, the other piece is it may be a matter of all of you understanding that the guidelines now, the recommendation I'm making tonight is 35 to 45 students per bus. But if we start tipping into needing more seats, say in April, I may come to you and say, I need to fill the bus with 65 students if you want us to continue offering this support to families. So that, you know, so again, it's all about the flexibility and the understanding.
Well, everything's had to be flexible this year anyway. So.
Right.
Right.
I don't know if you can see my hands, but I've had it for a while.
No, so you just have to jump in, Shannon. There's only
add
4
something
people
to that,
showing.
Flexibility piece, and I apologize if Allison has already said it, but we are anticipating updating the bus routes probably weekly and posting them to the website. So it would be very helpful for families to understand that it's going to be changeable and they need to check the routes on the website probably on a weekly basis because there could be changes.
Okay, thank you. Shannon?
Okay, so first, it was my understanding that part of the survey that you sent out and the school sent out was asking people who needed the bus. Where are we with those numbers? Not who's eligible, who needs it.
Dale has those numbers, and now it's a matter of, well, some people put that some people that are eligible need it, and some people that are not eligible need it, but we're also dealing with, today Dale had 12 families call that never completed the survey, but wanted to know what bus their child would be on. So, you know, we're still in the midst of collecting it. There are 195 people between the middle school and the high school that we haven't heard from yet. And that's in that grade 7 through 12 range, which is more challenging for us. And it's, you know, having us wonder, what is our priority? Is our priority to get more of the K through 6 students on buses that really need it, or on the 7 to 12 level? But Dale, do you want to answer Shannon's question to the best of your ability? Is Dale still here? I can only see 4 people.
He's muted.
I'm still here. I was trying to unmute myself.
Okay,
so I
sorry.
could speak. I can't give you a number. I could take a look at it tomorrow and actually count it up. But there is a fair number of people who were interested in the bus that do not qualify under the existing policy, which
Can
is
you give
why
us-
this question was posed tonight for consideration.
I understand that the number is changing, but can you give us a rough estimate as to how many people we're talking about?
So I think
a fair number is hard
I
for
think
me to imagine.
the high school principal said today he had 30 people that fell within that range, 30 something people. He said of that group, he said some of them were already eligible for special ed population, so he needed to take them out. And he said some of them only, you know, didn't actually qualify under any of the guidelines. So they lived below the 2 miles at the high school level. So he needed to go back and see, are they able to walk or ride a bike? What sort of, he needed to follow up with them. So it was generating a further phone discussion with them.
So that's the high school, and I feel a lot more confident about high school kids getting themselves to school. I'm a little more concerned about elementary and middle. Do you have some guesstimate as to how many we're talking about who are in need?
I would say at the elementary school, it's a handful, if that. And to be honest with you, the middle school is the school to where the buses are typically the fullest. More kids qualify for transportation to the middle school than to the high school because of their distance. And I would guess that the middle school might be the same number as the high school or a little bit more.
So around 30 to 40?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Can I just put a little pin in that comment right there? So I think that that's going to be a really critical piece of information going forward, that if more of our students are qualifying for buses to get to the Whitebrook Middle School, that means that when our new school is open, we're going to need more buses. So if I'm hearing about Hampshire County, Hampshire Regional waiting over a year to be able to get a bus that they've ordered in the past, that means we need to get ready to start ordering a bus so that by the time a year and a half from now, when we have students, a radical more number of students going to that school, we're going to have more buses than we currently have.
Yep.
So please make that request. Please put that, whatever we need to do to start looking at increasing the number of buses in Easthampton, we need to start looking at that to be able to make sure that we're on track for that when our school is open.
I agree, with an estimate of how many extra buses we're going to need.
Superintendent Leclerc, I just remember this from past presentations about kids coming back and parents, families making decisions. So if as a parent, I choose my child is going to stay remote, but then I change my mind, when can I change my mind? And when I change my mind, can I get a seat on a bus?
That will be a big factor. So we are telling families that you can always change your mind either way. But if you change your mind and decide after March 8th, say you decide you wait a couple weeks and you see things are going well and you want your child to start, you would inform us, and we say at a minimum, we would need 2 weeks to get a plan in place to welcome your child back in. We could need longer than that because it will depend. Transportation will be an issue. Classroom size will be an issue. How many desks can we fit? Will they be in cohort A or cohort B? So do they need a paraprofessional to support them in person? There are a lot of factors. So we're telling families at a minimum, we would need 2 weeks to welcome your child back in if they don't articulate at this point in time that they want to join the school. So yes, that could be a transportation issue. That's why Dale is saying we're going to constantly need to be issuing new routes and new information to families, and that's why we want to keep families in the loop.
Thank you very much.
I'm curious about whether, I'm just thinking about, so we developed a district policy that is more generous than the state's required transportation rules. And so that was something that we did as the fairest way we could imagine to get the most number of kids transportation into our buildings. Is there some way that we could have a temporary policy during this hybrid period where, I'm not sure exactly what it would look like, but something that allows us to serve students who need transportation now and who have committed to hybrid now, as opposed to holding open space in case
a future student returns to the hybrid model, such that the bus is now circulating with a seat that could have a student who's attending an in-person school now. Is there some way to have a revision to our policy such that, maybe if you have returned to school now, you can secure that spot? And then we just need to make sure that we're meeting the state requirement for the 2 miles, but perhaps we can't guarantee someone who lives 1.6 miles away who returns in late May a spot on the bus. Does that make sense?
And yeah, I believe we can do that. These are historic pandemic times. So you make COVID plans for everything.
Well,
that is an interesting concept.
If you'd like, Dale and I can put some language together that would kind of be an addendum to the second bullet that we have here, and maybe setting aside the fill the bus piece for now, and trying to put in what you're looking for, Marissa, and present that to the policy subcommittee for review.
Can I weigh in? I'm sorry, I don't know if you see my hand up.
Yeah, no, we can't. So just weigh in.
So I agree with what Marissa has said. We have spent a lot of time on the busing situation in normal times, never mind the pandemic. So I would like to be flexible and see the students get transportation who need it to the best of our ability with maintaining safety on the buses. And we have to be optimistic. Spring is coming, more people are getting vaccinated, and we hope these numbers are going to go further down and we won't be as hesitant to put more kids on the bus come late spring, maybe when some people are more apt to opt into the hybrid model and get their kids into school. So we have to think about it positively as things are now looking better, and let's get kids to school.
If we're talking about amending the policy, adding an amendment, one of the things that I was curious about is the fees. Are we gonna follow through with the fees that we normally charge? There's families that are gonna need the services who don't necessarily have the means.
We're actually waiving all bus fees this year during this pandemic period.
Okay. All right,
Thank
you so much.
That's helpful.
So I think I have some guidelines, as Dale said, to initially get this rolling for March 8th. And, we can put something together and run it by the policy subcommittee and see where we can go from there. I think I have some perspective on where you're kind of directing me to go, so we can make our best judgment on that. And hopefully I'll have numbers for you of students on the buses at the March 9th meeting, because we'll have students in the building at that point.
I do have a question. So I do understand that you talked to teachers, middle school and high school, and their feeling was that staggering a schedule would be difficult, and I totally get that. However, with elementary school, we're really talking about the beginning of elementary school days is usually a morning meeting or a circle time. There's a period of transition where you are just settling the kids in and finding out how their day is going or what's on their mind or what they brought to school to share. And the same thing with the end of the day. It kind of is a little looser at the end of an elementary school day with all the real learning happening in between. So my question is, and I'm just asking this, we're trying to get as many needy people on the bus. What if we only staggered, say, pre-K through or K through 3, or the elementary, and because that's what, K through 4, and then we concentrated on opening up as much busing for the middle school and high school families. So, I mean, I'm just trying to.
I can go back to the leadership team and discuss that option with them, Cindy. One concern that I would raise to you is in this current model that we have approved, we're doing like a half day. We're not doing lunch.
Yeah.
But yet the students have a full day of school, as do the teachers. So the way our schedule, if you staggered it, what you have to remember is that our teachers, our union members, have a fixed schedule in the afternoon. As soon as the students get on the bus, they have to have their lunch, then their prep, and then they have to be ready for science and social studies. They can't stagger. That's their afternoon schedule. So their afternoon is locked. So it's not like they can stagger on either end, on both ends. There's a possibility they could stagger on the front, but they all have to have lunch at a certain time because they all have to have their afternoon schedule in remote learning is a fixed schedule.
I get it. But
so if we
what
were in
about
school
para
full
support?
time-
What about para support?
But then if I stagger, and I'm not trying to be problematic.
No,
but
I hear you.
You know, as a teacher, that the paras are in the remote lessons doing pull-out groups. So if I pulled them from that to cover a staggered lunch, then I would miss them in the lesson.
The other thing that I just wanted, there were two things that haven't been articulated here that I think are important to know to consider the big picture of all of it. One is that the biggest stressor on our buses is the end of the day rather than the beginning. And that's because we have vocational technical transportation at the same time. So we have buses splitting off to go to CTEC. So we have fewer buses at the end of the day to work with than we do at the beginning of the day. So that's one thing. And that sort of compounds the staggering at the end of the day issue. And the other thing that I don't think I heard articulated here tonight, but did come forward, and this was relative to the younger children, is the hardship on families of having their children on different bus schedules. To have a second grader come in at one time and their fourth grader to come in at another.
Well, I was thinking K through 4 would be together on the same schedule.
Yeah.
And it would be middle school and high school that would be, I'm just trying to figure out, there are so many people who are really struggling, who need to work. This is a horrific time. And if we can figure out a way to get more people on a bus, but I'm going to be really honest, I would feel a lot better if we were only going with 30 to 35 kids on a bus. I understand the COVID team is okay with up to 45. That's not my
And I hope to not get anywhere near there.
Yeah.
I hope to keep it low. I hope our charge will be to keep it low. And I totally understand that.
Yeah. Lori?
Thank you, Cindy. Remember, we did discuss it in depth yesterday, and I also was nervous about it, but I was put at ease when Dr. Leclerc explained it. So the numbers do work out, especially because they're going to be facing forward. They're going to be wearing masks, and the numbers will only go up if there are siblings that will be sitting on the same bench. So there aren't going to be lots of kids sitting, nobody's going to be sitting next to each other if they're not in that same family. So the numbers are all variable because of family members. And with the windows open, even though I was concerned about, in inclement weather, are they really going to have the windows open? They'll have to. So parents will just have to, have little raincoats or ponchos for the kids because it could rain in, but the windows have to be kept open.
So I'm just going to jump in real quick because Lori, I appreciate you bringing that up because that was one of my questions. I just wanted to be sure that we weren't looking at having multiple students on a seat unless they were siblings, and it sounds like that's not the case. So thank you. Before we move on, I just wanted to throw out one more thing, just kind of in the vein of thinking outside the box and I have no idea if this would be feasible or not, but thinking to the spring and potential nicer weather with potential more people looking to come into the schools. I know we had success with the walk and bike to school event. I know that was a huge undertaking to make that happen just for 1 or 2 days, but especially as we're thinking about students who are in need of, whose families are unable to get them to school but live within those closer ranges to the schools. I just wonder if we could, if we started to think about it now, if there might be some way to facilitate with some volunteers, some kind of supervised travel, on the bike paths and some, other safe routes outside once it's not so bad out.
Jonathan,
Thanks
I
much for
love that idea because
Mhm.
I was working with the Department of Transportation on having walking trains in our city. And we do have plans to do more of that in the future, but I love that innovative idea to get moving on it quicker. And because I know that there were so many parents that were thrilled to help out with our walk and bike to school events, and they were so successful. And our Easthampton Police Department, they were there helping us all along, and I can't thank them enough for what they did to make those events so successful. So it would be a wonderful thing for the community to get on board on our walking trains, bike trains, and get kids to school that way, socially distanced with masks outside. Phenomenal idea, Jonathan. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's worth reminding people that even if your child qualifies, if there's a way that you can bring your child to school to allow a spot for someone that really needs it, that would be very helpful this year. So, I think it will take some reminding, but I think we can get there.
That was actually my next question. Have people actually offered to give up their seats?
Yes.
So we do
Yes.
have.
A lot of
Thank
elementary parents, have, they're home with their children. There's a little bit more flexibility. At the high school level, I can understand some of the challenges, particularly if the family is working outside of the home, and the child's home by themselves. They may not have the flexibility.
Have you seen the sidewalks around here?
Yeah.
It's a serious problem.
I know.
I mean, with my neighbors.
I was just going to say, and that part of that is a community responsibility to take care of our sidewalks. All right, I'm going to move on to spring sports. You asked.
Hold on.
I'm sorry. I didn't think anyone else was talking. I'm sorry.
So, you did ask for us to discuss this. I think that we've discussed it pretty well. I think there was some language that you discussed that you were going to bring back to the policy subcommittee, but it does feel like it's important for us to take an official vote to approve the guidelines of you being able to maximize seating in that 35 to 45 range with all the different guidelines that we've had here. So, Cindy, should we make a motion and move forward with a vote on that, or where do we feel like we are officially for that?
I think if you just, kind of give me that direction.
Right.
I'm not sure. It's an operational thing. I'm not really sure you need to vote on it.
My other concern is if we're not meeting until the 9th and we're supposed to be bringing more kids, a substantial amount of children back to school on the 8th, this isn't going to be resolved.
Well,
So-
this is in regard to the 8th, Shannon. We currently have students in the building and the transportation is already all set for them. We've addressed the pre-KK and 1. This is for 2 through 12 to give Dale the guidance to put the parameters around routing the buses that we have available to us.
Okay, so what I'm saying is if we're not going to amend the policy until possibly the 9th, because for a first reading, it's kind of, it's a thin line there.
So my recommendation is that we don't amend the policy, that we maintain the policy, but we can still take a vote that gives guidance on how to deal with it. And then the follow-up piece that I think you were still looking at and was going to bring to either the policy committee or just straight to this committee is we can look at, as our numbers may increase in April and May, that's when we might need to readjust. And that's the piece that we might want to put some more clarities, sort of rails around what is acceptable for that. But for right now, I think that if we move forward with guidance from this committee to approve a 35 to 45 seat, and also let parents know that if you think you're going to want to go back and you think you do fall into that realm of that you will need transportation, that you really need to do, we're going to strongly encourage you to start now and not wait until later to add your student in and have the possibility that we may not have spaces available then. We're going to do the best we can, clearly, but I think it's important for parents to understand that. But I do recommend that we make a vote on this and sort of have that clarity.
So just to speak to Shannon real quick, I mean, it sounds like, what Marin is suggesting is we move forward with this guidance now, and it would still, if we're not looking at needing to, like, we're not going to have people deciding to go from remote to hybrid until like April, after, school starts in a hybrid setting in the first place. So I think it would still probably be worthwhile for the policy committee, in my opinion anyways, to meet and discuss it from that standpoint, thinking that that might be enough time. I'd also be willing to make a motion if
Wait a minute.
Yep.
Hold on one second. What I was trying to say was, there's people that don't meet the guidelines that either the state or our own policy. So what I'm saying is, if we're bringing people back on the 8th, we're not meeting until the 9th. Right now, the policy stands as it is, and nobody, unless they meet those guidelines, can get busing. So we need to come up with something now that says, what are we going to do, for the 8th?
Yeah, I mean,
That's where the policy already is in place for them to be able to reach out to the superintendent and ask for an exemption. And we've already said that's going to be really challenging, but we're going to try to authorize her through this sort of vote to be able to give her the flexibility to do the best she can in determining that.
So have you already had some people say, I really need to get on the bus when it starts? And have you been able to grant those exceptions?
No, we have not granted anything yet. We've only been taking information in because we have been challenged by wanting to get an idea of how many students we could put on a bus, because there's a big difference between 21 and 65.
Yep, 21, yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was furious with Desi for saying you can fill the bus now, when the CDC is saying we still have to keep social distance. It's just crazy. I don't know.
I can tell you specifically at the high school, because Bill Evans texted me. He said 40, and they've been able to decrease the number of surveys that people have not responded to. So he has 370 responses so far, and 40 have asked for transportation, but 12 of those 40 are under the 2 miles. So 12 of those 40 that have asked for transportation are currently not eligible.
I suppose it'd be interesting to hear the counter statistic that says this is the number of kids who are eligible, who have given up their seat, and sort of weighing those kind of directly against each other.
And I don't have that tonight.
Yeah, I gathered. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with a vote for allowing, I mean, we've got to get kids on a bus. And really the question is, can we support, are we going to hold at the 21? Or are we going to follow the COVID response team's recommendation that we allow 35 to 45? And I think that really, they have to start planning those bus schedules. And then I do agree with Shannon, we need to continue to figure out if there is some leeway and some help and what we can do going forward.
So what I would add to that then is the suggestion that we enact our fill the bus policy such that we fill seats that are available to students who need it without trying to reserve for students that fall between the 1.5 and 2 mile range who haven't yet elected in-person learning.
I agree with you, Marissa.
So we'll need to reserve for the potential of people beyond the 2 mile legal requirement that otherwise need space first now.
I agree.
Yeah, makes sense.
So do you want to make that motion, Melissa?
Okay, I'll try. Jonathan usually does this.
Well, I mean, I think what you just said, Marissa, is captured by the policy. So we could sort of say, right, that we're going to maintain adherence to the policy at this moment in time with this first group of kids.
Yeah.
And then the motion, I think, needs to capture sort of this additional kind of restriction that we're putting on, which is that we're doing less than the normal number of students on a bus. Does that sound reasonable to folks?
And opening it up to students that are further or within the 1.5. That's what Marissa said. I think it's important to articulate that they can have an option to be on the bus.
Even though that's captured in the policy currently.
Yeah, I mean, the complicated part about our current policy is that we do it really incremental. So it's like only if we can offer to
True,
everyone who is at 1.25 miles. And I think we want to be a little bit more flexible than that in this scenario.
Okay.
So what we're saying is we don't want to hold a space for someone who's not coming in now, but who qualifies and may be walking and taking a bike come spring if they start coming in. We want to get the people who need it, the bus now.
Agreed.
Okay.
So I would like to make a motion that we allow students onto our bus such that there is up to 1 student per seat, with an exception for siblings who may ride in a seat together, up to a total of 45 students on the bus, adhering to our current policy and making every possible effort to provide transportation to those students who do not fit the policy as described, but who need transportation to get to school.
I second that.
That was to go back and listen to the recording.
That was done well, and you did it slowly, Jonathan, so that Sue Colby can write that down, because sometimes we put so much stuff in, it gets crazy. So is there any discussion before roll call vote? All right.
Can I just say?
Yes.
Instead of using the word siblings, can we say members of the same household?
Good point. Absolutely.
Good point. Nice job.
That was Bill Evans texting me. So.
Same motion as amended.
Okay.
Get that, Sue?
All right. Okay, so, and that was seconded, right?
I did.
Okay, and I cannot see well, so I'm just going to call Lori.
Lori Garcia, aye.
Mayor.
Mary LaChapelle, aye.
Jonathan.
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Shannon.
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Marissa.
Marissa Query, aye.
Maren.
Aaron Goldstein, aye.
And Cindy Kuzensky, aye. Good.
The only follow-up I would ask is that if we can just make sure that this is on our future agendas as well, so that we can be able to revisit it as needed.
So we should have a transportation update every single meeting. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be part of the COVID update. All right.
You hear
now
that,
I'm going
Sue? So I see Mike Gallagher has raised their hand. I have to say we cannot call on the public past public speak. The only reason why we called on Dale Doran is because Dale is our business manager and she's answering questions about bus numbers. So I'm sorry, we can't take anything after public speak closes. So we're going to put a transportation update, Sue Colby, on every agenda going forward so that we always are looking at the subject and maybe tweaking it. And I think we don't necessarily put it under the COVID update. We can put it right after, but I definitely want the word transportation update to be on that part. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I'll continue on. The next item on the agenda was spring sports. This is directly related to fall 2. These are the numbers that we have for the sports that you have approved at this point. You'll see that Chair has not opened up registration yet, but they did have phone conversations with previous students that participated, and so they anticipate 12 students on cheer. So those numbers look solid right now. I do want to pause here. I know that we've had a lot of feedback around basketball, and we've heard a lot of articulate young men and women tonight and family members. So, you know, I don't know if this committee wants to entertain revisiting that vote. If you recall, it was the recommendation of myself, as well as the athletic director, that we move towards having basketball for girls and boys. So I can move along if you'd like, but I'll pause here in case anyone wants to revisit that.
I would like to talk about it if we can, please. One of the comments made tonight by one of the parents, I thought was phenomenal, and it really stuck with me. And it was, let's have a conversation about whether or not they can play, but how they can play. And I think it's really important for us to do that. We just voted to put 45 kids on a bus. They're asking to put 10 kids in a gymnasium on a court together. So I think it's something that we really need to talk about, if at all possible.
Can I weigh in? I don't know if you see my hand. So
everybody's just going to have to weigh in because I can't.
So I also would love to discuss this because as many of our young people in this community know, I took the time to answer you. I took the time to answer some of the parents. I didn't have time to continue answering all of these heartfelt emails. And we really do understand your frustrations. We do have open minds, and you have to understand the school committee did not take away your right to play normal basketball. This pandemic did. I have to say that initially, I didn't even want teams to be playing inside because of the information I received on the COVID response team and from our epidemiologist. I pay attention to science. Many of you wrote that the local school, Williston, is playing basketball successfully. And I can tell you, as I wrote to many of you, they have only played a few games. Many of the games have been canceled because of the weekly testing that occurs for all of the teams. And there are only a few teams that were in a select pod to be able to play games. It's not like a normal season. And they had to wait to Thursday of every week to see what the test results were. In fact, recently they had to cancel 11 games because of one positive test in another prep school. I have said all along that I wanted our players to be tested. I got a lot of grief for that. I'm very happy that I said that. I found out only through the COVID response team that there actually was a positive case of one of our players who was playing on a team inside, and they had to quarantine the team. Many people don't know that. And if I had not insisted that we test weekly, we wouldn't have known that. And there would have been a lot more spread. Spread not only in the community, in your families, and that's what we're trying to prevent. We're trying to get students back in school. So I was able to say, with recommendation of our COVID response team, you can only play or practice if you're tested weekly. But how could we ever say that to the other teams? So even though you say that these other teams don't have any spread, you don't know that, because numbers are still increasing. People are still dying every day in this Commonwealth, in this country, and in the world because of this deadly pandemic. I love sports. I love students. I understand your social emotional needs, but I also understand your need to get back into the classroom. And we cannot do that safely if you are going to be playing games against other teams with asymptomatic players who are not tested weekly. And I would like to invite now Megan Harvey to make a statement, because she is our expert in this community. And we have said she is not just in the public, she is the expert on the COVID response team to be able to address some of the other concerns that have come to us as school committee members from people in our community, because we do read everything, we do care, and we listen. Megan, could you please address the community?
Sure, you actually summed up a lot of what we talked about in our COVID response team meetings in the past several weeks. I think just to summarize, we are all hearing the desperate pleas of not just the students in this district, but all students, that they want to get back to a sense of normalcy and that mental health is suffering. And we recognize that there's a collective trauma that we are all going through. And this is not to say that if you were able to play X, Y, or Z sport or X, Y, or Z extracurricular activity, that it wouldn't provide some mental health benefit. We understand that there's a balance that has to be selected, right? And thought about and balanced out. And the job of the COVID response team, or the task that was given, was to provide recommendations based on the evidence. The evidence that we consider is what the MIAA has put forth, what the state of Massachusetts has put forth, what the CDC has recommended, including the most recent guidelines from the CDC, and any other evidence-based, peer-reviewed, documented data that has come out related to school reopenings, sports, extracurricular activities spread among students in the K through 12 range. So with all that said, I mean, these were really anyone who's on the COVID response team. Lori did go over sort of our credentials earlier. I think there have been some questions about who is providing this advice. Hopefully that was reassuring to hear that it's a group of people who have trained for a very long time. And I'm one of those people, but there are people on this group who are not present and speaking right now, who are experts in their field as well. Let's see, what else did I want to say? The CDC recommendation is that at the level of spread Easthampton is experiencing right now, that there are no extracurricular or sport athletic activities, that they are all virtual only. The Easthampton Public School District so far, and the school committee, has voted to be more liberal than the CDC recommends. So again, it's not my personal opinion or the COVID response team's personal opinion that that's what we should be doing. We are translating the data over from the experts who have put it forth. And the experts from the CDC, the premier epidemiology, public health, infectious disease control group in this country have said no sports at this level of spread. We are having some sports. With surveillance testing, they recommend that you could have sports outside only. So that direct piece of information about indoor versus outdoor activity comes again from peer-reviewed evidence about what happens. And we could go into some of the nitty-gritty of like airflow inside versus outside. And I know it sort of seems like it should really be very similar if you're in a very large gymnasium with really good ventilation. But the reality of the situation is that it's not, and inside is inherently riskier than outside, even when folks are close together. There's really the two kinds of spread to be thinking about. There's the airborne transmission and the viral particle load. And I don't think that the data is showing any difference necessarily in that, but in the close face-to-face, within 6 feet, the way that currents and airflows work inside versus outside and the ability of the air to be diluted, there just is a difference in terms of where those respiratory particles are going to fall if they're going to make it for that, extended 6 feet or sort of be dispersed much quicker than that. We see evidence from this in, some of the restaurant data that we've seen, where not everybody in a restaurant gets sick, but in a restaurant with good ventilation along the lines of the airflow, those are the folks who pick up the infection if there's an infected party in that restaurant. So there's lots of different, ways we can dive into the data and all the stuff that we've looked at. And, I think it is, I would say, unanimous from the COVID response team that we are heartbroken over, the state of things right now. And the primary goal is to get kids back in school, all kids back in school, not just particular groups. Is there anything that I'm missing that we talked about? I think that's it for now, but I'm happy to answer any questions about any of that data that I've gone over or any way that I can help.
So the CDC, I've got right here printed up, the CDC just, at the same time that DESE, for instance, DESE said, oh, you can put as many kids on the bus as you want, you can fill it. There's no problem, open the windows. At the same time, you had the CDC publishing transportation, operational strategies for K through 12 schools. And they're saying what Megan and Lori are saying. They are saying that on the bus, if you can, to skip a seat, we're not doing that. We are talking about putting more kids on, which, is a big step. They are also talking about either virtual or sports held outdoors. If basketball was outdoors, we may be having a different conversation. But the recommendation is for sports and extracurricular activities to occur outdoors while maintaining 6 feet. Or maintaining 6 feet if you can, and virtual as a possibility. So
I'd like to also just add on about the CDC recommendations, that I just think that I hope the community recognizes what an awful position each individual school committee has been put in by having to vote on these things. There is no other time that we would have recommendations coming from infectious disease experts that would not be picked up by states and implemented. And in fact, what we are seeing after these new CDC guidelines have come out, that a number of states have very directly said they are not going to follow CDC recommendations, which is really a wild time for us to be living in. And so I hope that there's empathy also for the position the school committee and the administration are put in, dealing with, you have the state telling you one thing and perhaps mandating one thing, and science telling you another. And how do you reconcile those things? So I thank you for your, ability to hang in there with the science, even when it feels like it's really unpopular.
Dr. Harvey, thank you so much for empathizing with us, because these are such challenging times. And to hear, especially as I said before, from our students, I'm so proud of you for not only writing, but for getting on the screen tonight, because it takes a lot and we understand. And I have been in contact, especially with the Collenbacks. I can say it because their family is well represented tonight. And we did have dialogue in our emails that maybe we can be the leaders and say, why can't they play basketball outside? Like, why couldn't they do that and let you guys play basketball, but safer outside? So I would like to entertain that. There's no reason. Other places play basketball outside.
What would it take? What would it take for us to do that?
Well, I don't know who your question is directed to. If it's directed towards me, I guess my limited understanding would be that if we're talking about the fall 2 season, that's a competitive season. And so we might be practicing outside, but then when it comes to competition, we would go to a location. I've just been informed tonight that
True.
Hampshire Regional approved basketball this week or tonight. And so, you know, if our students go to Hampshire Regional to play basketball, it would be indoors. So, you know, we can't control other school districts.
No, you're right.
We can't control what their understanding is or what they're signing up for if they come to us. You know, I guess the piece that I would just want to state is that it appears, and this seems to be backed up by the science, that our COVID numbers are significantly decreasing, and they have been decreasing. So, you know, a decision that was made 2 weeks ago based on data at that time, that data is no longer the current information. So I would want to make sure that you understand that there's new data that is much lower. For example, I think the data that we had today from the city health department was, I think it was a 7-day average of about 8 cases per 100,000. It's extremely low. And I think this week we've only had, I'll say less than 5 because I don't know how much information I can give out, but significantly less than 5 in the city of Easthampton. So the numbers are very low. I would say, number one, I would make that point clear. Number two, I would say that, you know, you are correct, and I think we've discussed this before, that if there was, I'm not going to confirm anything on public meeting, but if there was a case that was confirmed on any of our teams because of an exposure that a student had due to their family, if we followed our mitigation practices and did the right thing and had our students quarantine and there was no other spread, then we did what we were supposed to do. In our sports and in our schools, we are not guaranteeing that there will be no cases. That is a myth. We are saying that if we put strategies in place that keep our students safe, and those strategies would include for sports, the MIAA guidance for whatever the sport is, and our nurse guidance, you know, from our health perspectives, et cetera, et cetera. If we did the right thing and we had no mitigation, then we were successful in that sport continuing on. So I will say that we have evidence to prove that we did that.
Well, I
but
agree. That's because you were doing testing. And that's exactly to my point.
Well, and number three, we're committing to pooled testing, which will be
But
weekly.
pool testing is
Correct.
not having everyone tested who you are playing against. So
Right.
that is the issue. And that's exactly what I said, Dr. Leclerc. If we could be assured that every player from every team was tested weekly, as we recommended, then I would feel better about it. As I stated, because so many people talk about how prep schools can play, it's because they test every student in their school weekly.
Right.
And if there's one case, not even with an athlete, they cancel every athletic competition. And that's how they keep it safe.
And the other thing is, at the time, the basketball kids were just practicing. So there is a lot more control when you only have practicing and they're not having that physical contact with each other. So there were safety measures involved, which were great. And I'm comfortable with those. for my part, a parent talked about attendance rates being horrible. I agree. We have a problem this year, but everybody has a problem across the country. Failure rates are up. I agree. They're up across the country in every school district. Kids are suffering because of this pandemic. For my part, my focus is getting kids in person, in school, to learn, to be able to interact with each other. I've seen it in my own district. When we are able to do hybrid learning, our kids' spirit is higher. They're happy. Their productivity is higher. They're able to learn. They're able to think. They feel much better. Now, I understand that for many high school kids, they are okay with living in remote learning situations. But I am very concerned about all of the other students who really aren't doing well in a remote situation, who need to be in school, and that's why the attendance rates are so poor and the failure rates are so high, because they need to be in school learning. And I will tell you, I am so sorry, but my personal hope is that we pack our schools with students at the safest numbers that we can, and we hold on to that. I don't want to open up and shut down because our numbers climb. I want to open up and stay open. I want to have a creative senior year graduation for our students. We do it outdoors. I think we could pull it off, but we need to get our kids in school safely. And any sport indoor is a risk to us shutting down, and our kids at the high school level and middle school level.
If I could jump in and just, I wanted to echo what Dr. LeClaire, and I think what everyone is really saying, but Dr. LeClaire is right in saying that our rates are going down, or we're headed in the right direction. Just to clarify how that lines up with sort of the recommendations that we're seeing, when we reach moderate community spread, that's when the CDC and evidence indicates that we can have full sports and extracurricular activities indoors and outdoors. That's at less than 7 new cases per day per 100,000. And so I think it's really reasonable to watch the rates each week, and when the official 7-day average comes out on Thursdays, to make, week to week decisions. I know that's not ideal, but with, I think there's some hope that we will reach before the end of the season a point where the practicing can turn into competition.
But my understanding is that wouldn't work. Is that correct, Dr. LeClaire? That if numbers continued to go down and we were able to do something inside, there's a point where it's too late. Is that correct?
I'm not sure about that. I would have, well, Mr. Evans is telling me we can make it work.
Yeah, I'm all for looking at this as the numbers change. I'm personally all for looking at it.
What it makes sense to me is that we should allow this sport to have its practices.
Yep.
And so that they can start their season, they can be developing their team, they can be developing their practices and practicing their skills. And then sort of along these lines, we can continue to look and at each meeting and say whether or not we're approving them to start to actually have competition. But at least this way, if we were able to put them forward to be able to come together and have practices, that would at least have them in that right trajectory. And so then they would be able to have some semblance of a season, even if worst case scenario is only practices for the season, they would still have teamwork and team practicing happening.
Right.
They have been practicing.
But they're already practicing.
They're practicing.
They've already been practicing.
That was a previous season. I did not believe that was going to be continuing this next season. These are
Well, they
different
can
seasons.
continue it into fall too. They would, I think it would be their intention to do that.
Right.
Okay, that's not clear to me. That's when you have different sport seasons, the season ends and your sport ends. So it's not clear that they would continue into just having practices in the spring season right now, in the fall 2 season.
Marin,
Unless we
let them
approve it.
practice during the winter season. We approved them doing the skills and drills.
Yep.
Back for the winter, and now, because they wanted to wait for the fall too, because there weren't as many teams playing in winter. So we chose to kind of, I think, go along with other towns and try to fall into the fall too. Just Cindy, if Mr. Evans and Mr. Miller are on the call, can they?
Mr. Miller is willing to talk if he can be given a minute.
Yeah.
Is that right, Cindy?
Yeah, I mean, it's pertinent to the issue if he's got information that we need.
Well, I have specific questions for him too, so that's why
I think he's.
I'm here.
Let me just stop the share for a second so we can see people.
Let me turn on my camera to look at my dog.
Hi, Brian. So I guess if I can just ask really quick, how many games are we talking about for each level?
So
we're looking at JV, varsity, male and female.
right. So the schedule has been pared down to about 12 games would be the max for each team, and they would be within a pod. So you'd be playing, 5 to 6 other schools. And they schedule it so that you play the same team home and away within the same week to try and, prevent spreading as much as possible. So you would on Tuesday play home and then Thursday play away against whoever, Hampshire. So yeah, it's about 12 games would be the max.
So it's 6 weeks and each week is basically one team.
Yes.
That we're playing.
I mean, that's the goal. Yeah.
Okay.
It works out scheduling wise.
All right.
I think
would
it's
they
more,
be
it's more than 6
practicing
weeks.
in the fall 2 season, even if we didn't approve a competitive season?
So the one thing that, I need to kind of clarify is, are we talking practicing or skills and drills? Because currently we're doing skills and drills. So we're just doing shooting and dribbling,
Correct.
things like that. We're not practicing. So we're not,
Right.
Competitively practicing. So I think those are 2 different things, the skills and drills and the practicing. So the idea of the numbers and what could work for us in that way is if we were able to practice where we're actually ready for competition when the time came, if the numbers ever got to that point. My assumption is that teams would be looking for like independent games because they've had to cancel games throughout the season. So most teams were scheduled in the winter for 12 games and some only played like 7 games. So potentially then I could start making phone calls and ask like, is anyone interested in playing us once our numbers get to that point? So we could, hold off as long as we can, as long as we were competitively ready. Right now we don't have any plays or anything because we've only been doing shooting and stuff like that. But if we were able to practice and be, ready for competition, and then if the numbers did go down, then I'm sure I would be able to pick up independent games. I don't think it would be fair to put us in the league with scheduled games and then just cancel until we were in the numbers. But I'm sure we could, get the word out to other schools and find games for us.
Brian, just to clarify, this fall 2 season is set to start on March 1st.
Monday.
March
And
1st,
when would, if all things were perfect, when would first games be scheduled for competition?
First games could be scheduled March 11th. The
March
schedules
11th.
haven't been set yet, but
So
you have to have 10 practices.
conceivably we have a school committee meeting prior to that.
So normally we play Hampshire first, right?
We have
I mean, I realize
traditionally,
it's not going to be at the cage, but
yeah, that's just, normally we're not scheduled to play them, and then they send out an invitation for us to play them at the cage. So
okay. So say the week of the 11th, we know on Thursday that you guys are playing Hampshire for that
Mhm.
week. So we could look at the numbers on a Thursday and say, you know what, things look really good for both towns. Go for it. You know, whatever the number is, you know, and I know it's lower now than it has been.
So with Hampshire, that's really hard, Shannon, because it pulls in from so many different towns.
Right.
Brian,
Yes.
would it be possible, because this is a pandemic, I know that it's not a normal season. Would it be possible, once there's snow melt, to try to organize outside games with other teams?
Not in a competitive, like MIA, like because the dimensions of the court and things like that aren't the same. There are no, plus we don't have hoops outside right now. They've all been taken down in the park. But, potentially.
Court, isn't it?
What's that? I'm sorry.
They're only half court at Nonotuck, aren't they?
No, there's 2 full courts there, but they don't have any rims on them. So potentially if, so could I make a phone call and say, hey, coach, do you want to bring your guys over and more or less a scrimmage? Then that might be something they would be agreeable to. But as far as getting officials and things, that would never happen, no.
But Brian, it's also something that, we, as I said, can be the leaders. And I know that this city is so distraught because we said yes to football and no to basketball games, but our neighbors next door, Northampton, said no to everything. And their football players have been, protesting at City Hall. So we do have open minds here, as you see by this dialogue that I want to create with you right now. So even like Northampton players that are so distraught because they're not allowed to do anything. Couldn't you get on the phone with their athletic director and say, let's create an outdoor basketball game? We don't have to follow everything MIAA. And for our players that are concerned that they're not going to have an equal footing to get into college, nobody does right now. Games are being canceled left and right in public schools and in prep schools. And recruiters know that. So we have to make it work for these kids to be able to play, and we have to think outside of the box.
So it sounded like Bill was saying to Dr. LeClaire by text that, let's say the season starts March 1st and the first game is March 11th. They could miss even 3 games. Let's say they missed 3 weeks of games. They would have 3 weeks if the numbers were down, or 4 weeks, depending on how quickly our numbers come down. They could have 3 or 4 weeks of games. We would just be starting when our numbers go down, to talk about what Megan was suggesting. And it appears as though you're saying that that is possible, that as numbers come down, if we got a later start, you would be able to pick up and begin to play. Is that correct?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to put us in the schedule, like in the league, because then if numbers didn't come down, then other schools would be losing that opportunity. I don't know the numbers exactly. I don't know how close we are or what the likelihood is of us getting into that range anytime soon. But yeah, more like the independent, where when the numbers got to that point, then I think I could find us competition.
Well, if we had this Thursday to look at and next Thursday to look at, and if I could confer with Megan on those dates, even via email, to get her advice to see where we are, we might be able to tell Brian it's a go if this committee agrees on, say, Friday, what is that, the 5th or so? If we're anywhere near it. If we're not, we're not. And then Brian will have to kind of bow out. and just do pickup games maybe.
Are you willing to let them practice competitively? Is the other question.
I
With
am, but that's up to you. That's up to all of you.
with
So
weekly
maybe we
testing.
need to take this as sort of a step-by-step sort of piece in terms of how to make a decision here. So first off, it seems like the first piece to this is whether or not we want to allow our basketball players, girls and boys, to be able to practice competitively, practice scrimmaging, practice with drills, all those different pieces, and to be able to start developing those skills. If we agree to that, then we can take it to the next level and trying to figure out how we might be able to either play in independently, or if our numbers are matching, being able to try to enter into the league. So if it makes sense, should we start there with at least the first vote on whether or not we want to approve basketball players to be able to have competitive practice?
With the caveat that they're tested weekly, every single player. And we can use the pool testing.
Do we know the pool testing, when that will begin, and if we're only doing it?
Targeting the week of March 8th for the first test.
Okay, and for 3 weeks, is that what we had said?
No, we're going to be doing it for longer than 3 weeks.
Okay.
So we're going to do it for the season, Allison?
Yes.
So then I would like to make a motion that we allow our boys and girls basketball players to be able to practice competitively with the use of pool testing to allow them to be able to practice and develop the opportunity for them to be able to join into games at a future date. Or yeah, take the last piece off, but.
I second that.
Any more discussion? Okay, Lori?
Yes.
Mayor LaChapelle?
You're muted.
Yes.
Jonathan?
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Shannon?
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Marissa?
Marissa Curry, aye.
Maren?
Maren Goldstein, aye.
And Cindy Kuzensky, aye.
So then the second piece of this would be to, what is the specific number, Dr. Claire and Megan, that you are saying we need to reach as a community in order for us to feel like we've reached that level of that sort of tier that's being recommended? I believe that's the CDC recommendation. What's the tier number there?
Megan, is that 7 per 100,000?
It is, but the COVID response team has not, that would be just like, I would hate to put forth that it's
Right.
a COVID response team recommendation when it's just me saying what the CDC said.
Right.
And I think the thing to keep in mind there is if you're talking about competition, what weight, like we got into a little bit of a mess last time with what's the city weighting of the 7-day city average and the 7-day county average, which will make even more of a difference when we're talking about competition. So there's a couple of different like components there. The CDC, yes, the short answer to your question is the CDC would say under 7 per 100,000.
Could we figure out a way to, if our numbers are a certain number and we're a go, only play, is there any flexibility where we only play a city, a team that is also at a fairly reasonable number?
That's what I was talking about.
In other words, you don't want to play a bright red city, but one where the numbers are also going down is a much safer, and I would do no spectators, absolutely.
Well, all the rules are written down, Cindy, and the only one that I had asked Brian and Bill about was the playing with red teams. There is a catch there in that Southampton is red because they have, their population is so low.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what the percentage rates are in Southampton, but they're in the red. So, does that wipe out Hampshire? Right now, based on what you're saying, yes.
Yeah.
So if we're looking,
But I
Well,
would
I'm
point
just
out
asking
that
out, you know,
And whose version of red, right? The state's version of red, the CDC's version of red, it's
the Thursday numbers they put out, they've been read for like 2 months.
yeah. That's state
yeah,
level.
no, Southampton is definitely red. They're still on the rise.
Those are all weighted for the population. So they shouldn't be affected by the fact that it's a small town and the fact they have a different way of coding the towns based on small populations.
Yeah.
Right. If you're saying red, you can't say red, you got to go by the percentage, right, Megan?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, ish.
Numbers, yeah.
But
So
that's kind of what I was trying to say earlier was that, you know, if we know who we're playing the following week, we can look at the numbers on that Thursday before the games and say, okay, we're good to go. You know, both we are and the town we're playing.
Right, and I said I agreed with that. It's just difficult when you're talking about a regional school because you have to look at so many different numbers, including Hampshire.
And we've, in the fall, we already were kind of following that protocol. If we were scheduled to play a team that was in the red, we were scheduled to play Westfield Tech in girls soccer, we had to cancel both games against Westfield Tech and St. Mary's because Westfield was in the red. Other schools chose to play teams in the red. You had decided that we were not going to play teams in the red, so we just canceled those games. I picked up another game or two against teams that weren't in the red. So there is flexibility as far as communication amongst athletic directors and figuring out because everyone's dealing with different protocols and whatnot. So if there was a set number, I mean, it has to be a number that makes sense to the other school, you know, the other team as well, so that we understand what we're talking about. But right now, we've been just going under the teams that are in the red. We do not participate. We do not play against them. But if it had to be a specific number, then as long as that number made sense to the other athletic director, we could go with that as well, or I schedule whoever meets those criteria.
Yeah, if I could just chime in there for a second. I think there's a universal language amongst the schools and the communities in the color language that is much more useful than to introduce metrics that some might be using and some might not be using. Everybody understands at this point the state system of red, yellow, and green and gray, and I think that has served us so far pretty well in terms of through the fall season. And I think if you make a decision based on the colors, it will make it easier for Brian and the other ADs to figure out who can play who, and not, ask other ADs to get back to their school committees to see what, like I'm a little concerned about creating another level of metric for other schools to have to deal with.
The only problem is making the agreement between what Easthampton is agreeing to and those. So if you're saying Easthampton's going to start participating in competition at, and I'm just making this up, 10 per 100,000, but then we're playing schools that are in communities that are just not in the red, that's a different level. So we've set Easthampton standards much more conservatively, but we're playing communities that we're allowing a much higher level. Right, so there's like following the red, yellow, green of the state, and then there's whatever this committee decides is a reasonable number to start competitive playing, and would you match other schools to that? Which is all publicly available data and can be checked every Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, we have the ability to check for those other schools. We don't need to ask them to check the numbers. We can be able to look at that number and say, this week we're playing Chicopee. Chicopee's this number, we can play them, we can't play them. We can make that determination. The state has unfortunately played around with their numbers, and so that it's not really the best, most scientifically based information to use their color coding. So that would be a little bit of a concern in this more competitive level of sports.
I guess, I would agree with Merit on that statement. I think if I were to vote in favor of this, it would absolutely have to be looking at the CDC's new guidance, specifically as it relates to indoor sports. I've been, I think, consistently I've expressed a lot of trepidation around contact sports up to this point, and I anticipate maintaining that. And I would just, take this moment, because I haven't really spoken up to this point, to say that, I certainly hear and empathize with a desire to return to a sense of normalcy and to use these positive trends as a sort of reason to push ourselves in that direction. And yet the positive trends are indicative of the fact that we're doing the right things. And it doesn't mean that it's always going to be that way. And in fact, if we look around at other places in the world who have reacted to this pandemic differently than us, they're still facing problems where there's a return here. And I would hate to lose sight of the fact that we should continue to act as if we are not returning to normal, and not look at this as a way to fix the mental health challenges that we're facing, because that's going to be an ongoing thing, and no amount of sports is going to fix the trauma that we're experiencing. And I just want to make sure we keep that in mind as we talk about these things.
There are many, many kids who do not play sports who also need fixing. So yeah, and getting kids in and keeping them in is a crucial part of starting that healing. Mir, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little back. So I forget if it was Megan or Lori or whatnot, but the last time we met, the COVID task force was surprised during that meeting to find out that there actually was a positive case on an athletic team. So I'm wondering about the protocol. And I barely voted for practice. I still don't feel great about it. But I just, Jonathan, I'm not going to repeat myself. Jonathan really stated my concerns about we're rationalizing something we have no control over. I guess that's what I'm going to say. So, I mean,
Well, I would say to that, it's interesting. I think that we can all agree that we've had such feedback from families. It seems that the families are committing to ensuring their students are healthy and safe to play basketball. I feel like the commitment by these families is deep. I mean, as evidenced by all of them on this call. And the students and the families, I think, are committed to doing the right thing as far as playing games. And what I will say to the mayor's point, I did meet with as we're beginning to return to school, I did meet with the nursing department with my RNs last week, and we did talk about the procedures for informing this committee. I won't come out in a public forum and discuss cases because of HIPAA regulations, but I will commit to sending a communication to this committee and to families in the community when we have positive cases in our schools, because I think that's important to be transparent about that information. But I won't articulate if it's, actually in a specific person's classroom or whatever. That's for the contact tracers to reach out to the people in that classroom. So just as a general point of information, that's how we'll proceed with information.
And my sense is that the school committee should know, but also immediately the COVID response team needs to know.
Yep.
Immediately, no delay, because the COVID response team is going to be able to talk and ask questions and then make recommendations for the school committee. We can't be working in the dark. We have to know what's going on.
I can just make a statement following all of that. I understand that there was, a case found based on the testing that Lori required, or that we required, but Lori insisted on. But the way that it was mitigated and the way that it was contained and the way that it did not spread, there was no transmission, that has to say something for what
Yes,
our schools are
absolutely.
doing.
Yeah.
And
And I applaud that. Yes, that's what I said.
Absolutely.
No, and I'm agreeing. That's what I'm
Yeah.
just reiterating because
Yes.
it's so important. And I'm, a parent of a graduate of 2019. I was fortunate that my daughter graduated before all this crap happened. But I got to know a lot of these kids and families that are begging to get back on the court. And I don't know if any of you, other than, Mr. Evans and Mr. Miller, have been to a game. You ever been to a basketball game at EHS?
Yes.
Yes.
Many.
It's a family. And these kids are missing their brothers and sisters. You know what I'm saying? And I understand that it's tough and it's hard, but we're talking about 55 kids, give or take a few. I think that was our original number for registered students. But these are the kids that are not going to want to get up and go to school, that are not going to want to go if we don't let them play with stricter guidelines. So those are also things that we need to think about.
Mir?
Yeah, in response to that, I mean, I will be brutal. One, I'll roll back a little bit. I mean, the passion and the level of well-spoken concerns and wishes by parents and students is not lost on me. It's so impressive and has made an impact on my mind. That said, we are in a dire state. And I'll tell you, if those kids get a choice to go to school or not, I'm okay with that because that means they're alive. And that means their grandparents are alive. There was a wedding of 57 people in Maine. Hundreds of people were infected in 3 states. 7 people died who didn't even know who got married. To say that we have had 1 positive case and no transmission, honestly, is delusional because we have no idea at all. Like, we're rationalizing. And if I could take my vote back right now about practicing, I would. That's, yeah. And it is horrible. And the trauma is real for these kids because they know what they can do and they see in front of them what they can do to make them to feel better, and to celebrate, basketball seasons, football, sports seasons and graduation and those traditions, which I have gone to, the volleyball games, the basketball games. I mean, they are. It's hard not to sit there and feel a part of a family. I just want to be able to sit there again with as many people as possible who are alive. And another delusional fact, if you think we're not going to lose somebody who would go to that game if we haven't already, that's delusional. 500,000 people are dead from COVID-19. I don't want one more in Easthampton. I don't. And there's nobody who's going to convince me to twist any regulation that can promise me no one else is going to die. A kid won't get COVID-19 and have permanent neurological damage, even though he lives. I mean, can't do it. Yeah, my vote will be hard no regardless. I don't see a safe way to do it, and there's no guarantee.
If I can speak to support one thing that Mayor LaChapelle just said, and Dr. LeClaire and Lori will vouch for the fact that I say this, I don't know, what do you guys say, like 6, 7 times a meeting? Whenever we talk about the data that shows there's no spread from these cases, I jump in, I say, we do not know that. We do not know that. We do not surveillance test in this country. And we point to other countries that have been able to stay open and how they're ranking at work. And we have a very different approach to surveillance testing in the US, and it's a sad fact.
Yeah.
We've been failed at the highest level here, not at the school committee level or the admin level.
Right.
I would just point out, for clarifying though, that, and again, I don't want to get into specifics, but if we had a student that tested positive in a team or a class had to quarantine, be assured that that team would need to all get tested. So even though surveillance testing is not part of the community norm per se, we have those guidelines within our teams. And that's a practice that we have in place.
And how lucky would we be if we actually know if someone's positive? We're basing it on luck, that somebody got tested at the right time. Maybe they didn't catch the virus deep in the nasal cavity. I mean,
that's true, but you know, if we're implementing pool testing now, we should be able to catch some of that.
Some.
Yeah.
Some.
So I don't mean to minimize the risk. I just want to toss out, there is risk in opening your schools. There's risk in putting kids on a bus. There's risk in everything we're going to do. The job that we have is to look at the risk and try to minimize the risk while maximizing the benefit. That's really our mission, because there is no way, unless we all stay remote and we never go into school until everybody's perfect. There is going to be risk putting kids on a bus. That's why I'm agonizing every time we make an adjustment, every time we're, increasing busing. That's a risk. We're going to have to be careful. We're going to have to watch. I do think we have an incredible COVID response team. And if they are made aware and they're able to monitor, I think that the procedures, I've seen them work. So I think we have some great strategies for minimizing risk. So I think that if we came up with something that we were comfortable with and we met those numbers, then we, obviously we're going to do it. If we did it and we started a basketball season, there's going to be times we're going to have to do a hard stop on a game. And if our numbers rise, you'd have a hard stop, period. Mayor?
I mean, to stack risk on top of risk. So sitting on a bus with windows open, is a risk. I get that. And we've talked about it, like no matter where or how our kids go back to school, we're going to have an outbreak, right? But I just look at it of mitigating the chance of a risk, so let's start and get kids on the bus and back to the buildings, right?
I agree.
And be able to narrow that community transmission down, or that, the contact rate would be, in my head, I'm looking, we don't want to we don't want to stack risks on top of each other. I think we want to piece by piece add them and see what happens. I mean, the other thing is, we were this low before and we went through the roof red and we didn't have kids in school, So, I mean, again, hoping it doesn't happen again. So I just say, yeah.
No, I
Maybe
agree.
I'm sorry,
Lori?
I agree with you because we have to evaluate the risks and what is our main intent to get students back in school. As much as we hear these students and these parents that they miss athletics, our main goal as a school committee is to get our students in school right now during a pandemic. And if we're going to put risk on risk on risk because of playing sports inside with other teams that don't have any testing, that risk is too great to take. So I
So
feel
let
that
me-
we maybe start the practicing only with Easthampton, continue the testing, and I think we should reevaluate after the COVID response team. I don't think we have to vote on everything right now, because I think listening to Mr. Miller, he really can't sign on to a full season anyways right now. Am I correct, Mr. Miller, as what we're saying all these stipulations are? Yep, you're muted.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be comfortable unless, you know.
So what if we
I'm
revisited
suggesting-
this?
So
What
I'm
if we
sorry.
what if we revisited this March 9th?
Yes. We'll look
What
at
if we
numbers.
looked at the numbers, the COVID response team looked at the numbers, and we made a proposal? Is that too late? I think it's probably not, from what I've heard tonight.
It wouldn't be too late as long as we're able to have the practices, which you've already voted on. Yeah, it wouldn't, I don't think I could get us in a consistent league schedule, but yes, I could work to find teams that meet our criteria and schedule games with them.
So what if we table this until the 9th and we look at the numbers? They could be
I
so
also
much better.
wonder, I would just put out another view on it too, though. I think that if we're looking at numbers, right, we don't have to, sort of like we made a decision around how we go back to school. We made a decision on matrix, and then those metrics decide whether or not something happens, right? So we could make a decision tonight that says we are going to go forward with them being able to play a game. If on Thursday the number comes out and it's at 7, which is the CDC recommendation for indoor sports, if it was at 7 in our town or city and 7 in the town or city that we were going to be playing the following week, then we could play that town or city that following week. And then we both locations would be under the CDC recommendations. And then we've set a metrics that our athletic director would be able to communicate out and be able to work with other towns and cities to be able to set up, you know, sounds like not be able to join the whole league, but we'd still be able to add in games as we were able to and not get a full season, we're going to get a partial season. And we would still be following clear scientific guidelines for ourselves and for the communities that we were playing.
So right now, it looks like we have 2 ideas on the table. One is wait till March 9th to relook at this and look at the numbers. And the other is to come up with a number and see if we hit it.
Well, I like Marin's suggestion because we are dealing with science, and we could say 7, which is the CDC recommendation. That's not our number, that's science. And that's what I always bring to this committee, science, not opinion. It's scientific fact. So 7 is a number that we could deal with in our community. And if it's a regional school, it would have to be every town involved with that regional school.
Anybody else?
Just a clarification. So the 7, so like it would be the 7 would be on this coming Thursday's number for next week's game.
That's what I'm suggesting as a way to be able to use that metrics every week to be able to determine whether or not we are, just like the state's using color coding, which we're all sort of feeling is a little too manipulated. And so, but that would be setting a very clear number that then Brian would be able to know if our teams were going to be able to play that following week and which teams then he could try to set up games with to be able to play with the following week.
And then between the finding out all the towns that were involved in this game were 7, would our students be tested before the game the following week?
They're getting tested every week, Nicole.
I don't know
Right,
when
so-
the exact pool
Right. Oh,
testing
I'm sorry.
is, but
Well,
get
they're gonna
tested-
get routinely tested every week.
We're targeting every Tuesday. And they get the results by Thursday.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
So we would have
Right.
the test results, the numbers and everything on a Thursday, and Brian would know by Friday it's a go for next week or not.
yeah, so
I
it'd
mean-
be lining up pool testing for that week and the numbers coming out from the state for our local city and the competitor team.
I mean, when I
And
get
yeah,
my
if things
weekly,
fluctuate, of course, we all have to recognize that you'll get, anybody can still contract something afterwards. Things will still happen, but that's been our entire life for the last year has been always sort of fluctuating, and we're using the best science that we have at the time to make a decision. This way, we're using a scientific guideline, setting a very clear line that's recognized, and allowing our team and our athletic director then be able to be flexible to attempt to try to get some competitive games in, but only within those safety guidelines.
yeah, I mean, the safety guidelines, my issue there are the safety guidelines that we're using are definitely science, but they're point in time. And every day, every week when I get my COVID test back, the first thing it says is this indicates that you do not have the SARS-19, whatever, the COVID-19 virus at the exact point in time you are tested.
Correct.
And in fact, and I just say, I'll go back again, we're trying to get kids back in school. We're trying to get back to some new normal.
But we're
And
using those exact same numbers to determine whether or not they're in school. So if we want to say, oh, point in time is good enough for being in school, but point of time isn't good enough for sports, then we're actually changing the dynamic that we're actually using. We're using those same point in time number reflections to determine whether or not our kids are actually in school or not. So we have to use the exact same guideline for everything else.
So what about the other point of science around aerosol? Are you going to tell me that kids who are playing basketball are less likely or at the same level likely to transmit infection? I see very few, when I was a teacher so long ago, very few kids sweat and spray sweat and bodily fluids to another child in a classroom compared to what happens on a basketball game or even a football game. I mean, the pick and choose of what the science is, there are many variables.
But that's why we're saying our kids can be in school at 30, because the amount of likelihood of being able to transmit is still very low, and the risk mitigation there is low enough that we're comfortable to have a level of 30 and have kids in school. We're talking about a level of 7 to be able to play basketball. So we're not taking the same numbers and saying, oh, it's the same situation. We're saying that we're having a much more stricter number to look at to be able to then have these students be able to play basketball.
Yeah, I mean, seven kids who are sweating, I've got to think the multiplier on that is maybe as high as 30. Like you're sweating, you're sticky.
It's
Are they
6 in
gonna
our
be-
community, though.
yeah,
It's
I
not
mean, are they
7 of
playing
those
with-
kids who are sick.
Yeah, Maren, if I could just finish my sentence. Are the kids wearing N95s? Are they double masking? Are they not going to sweat? I mean, 7 kids, 2 kids, when you're sweating, I mean, there's a reason why gyms were closed. And only 1 or 2 people could be in that gym, and we still had spread of infection.
Aren't they open now?
They are now, but to limited numbers. And again, you're on a gym, you're on an elliptical with nobody around you, and we're talking about 7 kids who are playing games with another 7 kids. So it's 14 kids.
not how basketball works. It's 5-on-5.
You
But
know,
so the 7 number is about how many people in our entire community are showing up positive at that moment. It has nothing to do with how many kids are playing on the courts. It's 5-on-5 and whether or not we're having 7 in our whole community.
Lori
10
and
kids,
Jonathan,
Science is recommending.
no difference for me.
I appreciate all of this, and because I'm listening to all these numbers all the time by the scientists, and so 7, to be honest with you, Mayor, is going to be a very hard number to achieve, and I want everybody on this call to realize that. So we have a goal, but that goal is also, as I have said so many times, it's driven by the community. It's driven by how people are acting. It's driven by people unmasking and eating together. So if you want to get to that 7, you really have to change your lifestyle. So many of you are still doing things you shouldn't do. So there's a huge difference of 30 going to school and seeing 7 obtained, which would be a dream, to be honest with you. So try for it, Easthampton. Jonathan?
I am looking for a point of clarification on this 7 figure, and maybe Megan can weigh in on this because I'm going based off of a summary and I have yet to find it in the actual report itself. But according to the summary here, we're saying 1 to 7 new cases per day per 100,000 would come with it a recommendation of full sports and extracurricular activities, indoors, outdoors, with 6 feet distance required. And I can't help but wonder if really when we're talking about contact sports, if we're not actually looking at the low category, which is 0 to 1 new cases per day. Because that's what I'm looking at in terms of, no longer requiring that 6-foot distance. And again, I know that we allowed football and that's less than 6 feet. I didn't vote for that. And I just want some clarification as we talk about this 7 number.
That's a really good question. And they don't specifically say, this is one of the times where they leave things a little bit vague. My understanding after reading through it several times is that they're referring to everything that's not play. So coach would be 6 feet from player 1, would be 6 feet from player 2 who are on the bench. That's my understanding based on what they talk about. Not it like game time, they're allowing full normal activity.
Okay.
It's
That's
not
my understanding.
I think they're saying that because if I can echo what Lori said, less than 7 cases per 100,000 population per day is really low. I don't think we've been there for quite a while. And to find 2 towns or cities that are under 7 cases per 100,000, I think it's possible given the way things are trending right now because things are sharply decreasing. But it's a number we haven't seen in a while. And I think that's why the CDC picked it. I think they're keeping in mind, we could probably have a whole other school committee meeting dissecting what the heck the CDC means here, but I think they're keeping in mind things like how close contact happens, what celebrations are like, and what potential the variants have for coming back and how quickly. I think that's why they picked such a low number.
I mean, I'll call the question.
You'll what?
Call the question. I mean, it's not a matter of a vote, I'm expressing how I feel about, how I'm going to vote, but it's not a consensus building, not a consensus, type of vote. So to call the question just brings to ask for a motion to come forward and to vote. that it seems discussion is just circular at this point. Parliamentarian practice. Call the question.
So then I would make a motion that we allow for Easthampton High School's basketball teams to be able to play competitive teams, other teams, if our city is at 7 or below, and the competitor is also at 7 or below. And that would be determined each Thursday. We would also know our test results for that week would also be coming back, it sounds like, on that Thursday. And then we would be able to make a determine and make calls to be able to who else would be able to play that following week.
I'll second that.
You would need to add in that it's 7 per 100,000.
Correct,
Okay.
7 per 100,000. Based on the CDC guidelines.
At the city level, or else people wonder if we're talking about city or.
At the city level.
So can we say that again? Because we do this to Sue all the time. Could we just put all those pieces right back in again one last time?
So based on a Thursday review of our current city numbers, if we have 7 or below cases per 100,000, then we would be eligible to play competitively in a game. We would then look at who else in the area has the 7 or below, and if they are available to be able to play, then Brian can set up a basketball game for our teams to competitively play that city or town.
Do I have to second that again?
Good, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, Lori.
Lori Garcia, yes. So all of you people out there, you know we have an open mind. Yes.
Mayor LaChapelle.
No.
Jonathan.
Jonathan Schmidt, no.
Shannon.
Shannon Dunham, yes.
Marissa.
Marissa Curry, yes.
Maren.
Maren Goldstein, yes.
Okay, we've got it anyway, but for the record, I'm going to say yes because I think that's a reasonable number. And it
Now you guys
feels
better
good.
send me the Zoom links to the live feed of these games, since we can't go. Thanks, Meg.
One thing we didn't put in there is no spectators.
It's already in the rules, Cindy.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because the last time we had parents say, oh, we need to come, and this is a big leap for us. And I will tell you, I have no problem pushing to shut everything down if it's going to ruin our ability to educate our kids. That to me,
the kids and the parents are dedicated to making sure that the rules are followed and that they're following all the protocols.
All I would ask of families, because I believe that, and I would just ask that they take a step further and remain, assuming we even get to this point, but remain the utmost cautious in their home lives. And it's not just being careful on the court and following those protocols, of course.
Thanks for saying that, Jonathan, because I really think that maybe it is motivation for people to be more careful, because we know that people aren't careful enough. So that is why I voted yes, because if it drives this community spread down with a yearning to be able to play basketball, then do it. And I know, and the teenagers out there, listen to me, I've taught you for 30 years, you are one of the main causes of this spread. You are asymptomatic, you are getting together with your friends, and you are taking it home to your families. So stop it. Wear a mask and stay 6 feet. Thank you.
Wow.
no, I agree. Thank you, Lori. I tell my students every single week in almost every single class, the exact same thing. We take a minute or two to talk about what it takes to keep school open and how little it takes to shut it down. And
You gotta
we're
start
just
including that
opening.
in your morning announcements, okay?
We do.
No, I said
And
Bill does.
hopefully they will. I hope he does. The more kids hear and they realize what's at stake, I mean, hopefully people will use their heads. Okay.
Okay, believe it or not,
Somebody's asking something.
Can I make a request? Could I meet with like Meg? You guys threw a lot of numbers at me and stuff that I'm responsible for, and I want to make sure that I've got a perfect understanding of it. So, is there Megan or whoever?
Brian, I'll set something up.
Okay.
I'll set something up with us. I'll reach out to Megan tomorrow and set something up.
All right. Thank you.
Yep, yep. All right, everybody, I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen because I do have just a few more slides and I'll
And
try to go.
Megan, thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
You do this all the time for free. I thank you so much.
This community is so lucky to have Megan Harvey here. So
Yep.
I've said it a million times and I won't stop saying it. I'll even say it after the pandemic. Thank you, Megan.
Okay, so I think the only big thing that I have left is pooled testing, and I just want to talk a little bit about it because we've discussed it a little bit tonight.
And then we have a resolution.
Yes. So pooled testing involves mixing roughly 10 to 15 samples in a batch or a pool. Then a test is performed once per week through the anterior nasal swab, and the samples are usually administered by a staff person, but students are encouraged to do them themselves. And so we will do that weekly. We've been meeting with the company that's going to be supplying the tests for us, and they've just sent us the link today so we can begin gathering the parent and the staff consents for this. So hopefully we'll have a really good turnout for adults and for students that want to participate in pooled testing. And basically, for those of you that are new to pooled testing and don't know, if the entire pool tests negative, then no one in that pool has COVID. And if the pool comes back positive, then everyone in that pool needs to have a rapid test done to determine who is carrying the virus, or how many people are carrying the virus. And then we would go from there. So we have, we'll be working on the pooled testing. We also have the rapid tests in-house already. The rollout during the initial 6-week period, the districts will receive the kits. The test services will be, support will be provided, and the test software will be provided at no cost. Following the initial 6-week launch, districts may continue to use the pooled testing by purchasing the tests. So what I understand from speaking with the commissioner right before school vacation is that they've had some other communities that tried to get out earlier. There were some challenges around that, and so they didn't get started before vacation. So I think that he made the statement that for any district that is starting now, they will have 6 weeks of the free trial. So I think I told you at one point that we would only have like 3 weeks left in a trial for us because other communities started before us. But those communities are just kind of getting started now this week. So the commissioner said, because there were some problems, some kinks in the beginning, that he will honor the 6-week phase in. At that point, I think as a community, I would like to reassess with my team and with the COVID advisory team where we are, what kind of participation we have, what the COVID metrics are in the community, if it's still necessary for us to continue. I'm not saying that we won't, but I'm saying that I'd like to make a thoughtful analysis of the information at that point in time. So the process that we've undertaken, we applied to be part of pooled testing. That's already done. We met all the preconditions. That's already been done. We met with the agency. That's been done. We've set up the training to gain familiarity. We're in the process of doing that. We have some new nursing staff coming on board, securing consent from staff and students. That's this week. And then we hope to begin the weekly testing the week of March 8th. You know, they need a 5-day window to get the test supplies to us. So, and as I said, we're targeting a Tuesday during the week. And final thoughts, I just want to be clear because I've said it before. We cannot wait to see students back in our schools. That is, my leadership team and I could not be more excited to welcome students back. We have been waiting for this for a long time, and we've been working hard every day to get to this point. And so I want people in the community to know that we want students back in our schools right now. So we can't wait for it to happen. So those are my final comments, and I'm happy to take any questions around pooled testing. And if not, we can move to the resolution that's on top.
I just want to say I am really excited to get kids back in school. I've seen hybrid work beautifully. I've seen it raise spirits. I've seen it gets kids re-energized for a learning, and I can't wait. I think it will go far for healing Easthampton. I know some people are wishing for everything to be full in person 5 days. We just can't do that safely, but I'm going to be really happy with hybrid. I'm really happy to get kids in. Behave, everybody in Easthampton, please.
So
I'm ready for the resolution.
Yeah,
if
I think I'll let you-
everybody else is.
Do you want to discuss the resolution, Cindy? Or Shannon, was this the one you wanted to bring to the group?
Okay, so that's what I was wondering. It didn't say, I wasn't sure which one it was. Okay, so I rewrote the resolution in regards to getting teachers and staff vaccinated, prioritized, you know, in phase 2 of the COVID testing, or the I'm sorry, the vaccinations. However, we're already in phase 2. Lori brought this up to me. I'm not sure if it's the timing is right. I don't know if it would make a difference if we did actually submit it. I don't think it could hurt if we did. But I did have to change some of the wording in there, realizing that the vaccination phase 2 has already started.
And teachers still are not prioritized yet. So Lori?
So I want to thank Shannon for bringing this forward. It's just that the timing, as I've discussed with Shannon, it's really late. Finally, the CDC did say that teachers should have been prioritized in 1B. Teachers are essential workers, as everyone on this call can say. We should be vaccinated to be back with our students. But that didn't happen. Not only did that not happen, the governor pushed teachers down the list 3 different times. So even if we were to vote on a resolution, I totally think we should, but it's not going to help, because right now we are scheduled to be next in line. And as everybody hears, the rollout has been a disaster in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So people that already are in line, meaning people with 2 comorbidities and the 65-year-olds are scrambling. They can't get it. Teachers are after. So no matter what we say, we're not going to get there unless we could do something to convince this governor to let cities do a vaccination for teachers. When towns and cities have tried to do that, they pulled out the vaccine. It's happening in the country. They're not allowing places to vaccinate teachers if they're not in the proper order. So,
What
I mean,
I
I
would,
don't know if it would prevent them getting pushed further down the list.
It might.
yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it all is going to be us making a stand and saying this is what we think. So whether
Right.
it's whatever stage we're saying we believe they should be allowed in, 2 is where we're right now. We could be in 2 for several weeks. I mean, it can be 4 or 5 weeks we could be in stage 2. So they could be moved up into stage 2 tomorrow if the governor decided that, right? So I think
I
it is
agree.
still worthwhile for us to stay that teachers should be within stage 2. And that's pushing one more voice among many in this Commonwealth to say, we're in stage 2 right now and teachers should be included in it. So I think it's a worthwhile thing, a statement to make. And I think it's a worthwhile statement for us to make tonight.
That's
Can we
basically
add-
what I was going to say.
I agree with that, but could we add to that statement and make a further push to allow districts, because I know there are districts that are already setting up plans just to have vaccination clinics for teachers. So then teachers wouldn't be scrambling among all the other people. I know that Dr. Leclerc is going like this, but I know that our nurses said they did not want to deal with that. But we are already partnering with Northampton for the vaccinations. So maybe
Right.
if we
If
could partner with the
Northampton, if Northampton can do it.
right. So I'm saying nobody has said they can do it, but I have already been in touch with state reps and state senators who really agree with us that teachers should be vaccinated. So we have to make a stand to make it work, to have teachers vaccinated sooner rather than later. And not just the resolution that just says we should have been, because we weren't vaccinated. So, and it's appalling because in other states, teachers already have had both vaccines.
Right. Yeah, I'm all for going forward with it. Shannon, do you want to read it?
I absolutely do not. I get stage fright, and I will
Okay.
trip over my words.
I had my copy and I moved it in my pile of papers. Does anybody have it up right now?
Marissa's really good at reading stuff. Marissa, I just noticed it says to move school personnel into group 2 of phase 2. I think we just need to change it to remain in group 2 of phase 2.
Is it in our packet? I'm scrolling for it right now.
No, I emailed it separately.
No, we printed it up separately. If Dr. Leclerc has it and she wants to, and she could put her hands on it, she could just put it up and we could have Marissa, I'd be willing to read it. I don't care.
Yeah. So
I had it printed for this meeting and I moved it somehow.
And I lost some of it when I printed it. That's why that was the other reason I didn't want to read it.
Can you see that? Oh, that's Hadley.
Yep. Oh, no. Yeah. We don't want that one.
That's not from Shannon. That's to Shannon.
Right.
I don't know that I have it. It was from you, Shannon?
I have it right here. Would you like me to read it?
Sure, yes.
Whereas, as of February 18th, 2021, the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic has infected over 27.5 million individuals in the United States and has resulted in more than 489,000 deaths, which we know has gone over 500,000 across the country, including 15,373 in Massachusetts. And whereas a strong public education system, which is essential to the individual and community well-being of our society, is facing unprecedented challenges due to the coronavirus pandemic and lack of clear national, state, and local direction of resources. These challenges include, but are not limited to, the academic and social emotional toll on students, as well as the need to rapidly pivot to health protocols and social distancing, assess and address the risk to teachers, staff, and students, and whereas widespread mask wearing, social distancing, and hand washing is scientifically proven to help prevent the coronavirus infections, and whereas although COVID testing and contact tracing currently the only effective strategy available to slow the coronavirus spread prior to the FDA-approved COVID-19 vaccine becoming more readily available, it is insufficient to support the public education system in our country, and whereas vaccines are proven to be the most effective strategy to reduce and eliminate the spread of infectious diseases and are an important and necessary tool for eradicating disease, and whereas many of the steps our nation has taken to safeguard our communities against COVID-19 have been conditioned upon the development and ultimate availability of a vaccine, and whereas initial vaccine production is not sufficient for all people to be vaccinated at the outset, a well-managed priority distribution plan must give priority to the most highly vulnerable in the community, including essential workers, and whereas work is in a wide variety of settings, healthcare, education, public employment, meatpacking, and agriculture, among others, are at increased risk of work-related exposure to SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. These workers are entitled to all evidence-based protections from exposure at work, including access to a safe and effective COVID-19 vaccine. And whereas a free and open K-12 public education system is integral to the functioning of our community, the inability to safely open schools could compromise the long-term educational outcomes for many students, especially our most vulnerable students, the mental and physical health of many students, the lives and livelihoods of many families in our community, and the local and state economy. The full extent of the ripple effects of an inability to safely open schools are unknown, but potentially significant. And whereas, given the unique and critical role that our K-12 public education system plays in the functioning of our community, society, and our democracy, it is critical that teachers and classified staff be prioritized among essential workers who are given access to an approved COVID-19 vaccine. And whereas, as of February 3rd, 2021, the New York Times reported that 24 US states have already begun vaccinating teachers. And whereas, if public school personnel in Massachusetts are relegated to a later phase of vaccine priority, the ripple effects of school closures will be intensified and prolonged. And whereas, if, on the other hand, public school personnel are prioritized in the distribution of a safe and effective vaccine, one of the significant challenges to reopening schools and keeping them open will be diminished or eliminated. And whereas the Massachusetts Department of Public Health is currently planning a COVID-19 vaccination plan that has teachers prioritized in Group 3 of Phase 2, for which Group 1 of Phase 2 began February 1st, 2021. Let it therefore be resolved that the City of Easthampton School Committee calls on the state legislator, the governor, and the Massachusetts Department of Public Health to include all certificated and classified school personnel in Group 2 of Phase 2, move them from Group 3 for access to a COVID-19 vaccine. Be it further resolved that the City of Easthampton School Committee calls on the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, MASC, to publicly advocate for public school educators to be prioritized among essential workers who are given access to the COVID-19 vaccine. Be it further resolved that the City of Easthampton School Committee directs the district superintendent to transmit official copies of the resolution to Governor Charlie Baker, the Commissioner of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, Riley, State Senator Joanne M. Comerford, State Representative Mindy Dahm, and Natalie Blass, and we should say also State Senator John Velas. He's not on this. And the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, passed and adopted by the City of Easthampton Committee on this
23rd day.
23rd day of February 2021.
Can I ask one point of clarification, if that's okay? When we say all certified and classified school personnel, can we just be clear, Dr. Leclerc, if that means teachers, paras, administration, clerical, is that including everybody with that? I just don't want to make sure we have anybody that feels that would be not included in that list. I mean, I would even put custodians. I mean, just want to make sure it includes everybody that we're saying that comes into a school, they should be on that list, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Maren. Yes.
Thank you for your passionate reading there, Lori.
That was, you either had too much coffee or you were just super passionate, but it was great.
I would not touch that, just so y'all know.
I'm passionate, as you know, and I'm a teacher who needs to be vaccinated, so there.
Any more discussion? Okay. Do we have a motion?
Can I make a motion that we pass this resolution?
I will second that motion.
All righty. Okay, so here we go. Lori.
Lori Garcia, aye.
Mayor LaChapelle.
Mayor LaChapelle, aye.
Jonathan.
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Shannon.
Shannon Dunham, aye, and I will forward you guys just a tweaked copy of it. City so you can sign, and that Allison can send it out.
Right.
Sorry, I only had what was on my phone in the email, but I thank you, Shannon, for working hard on this. Thank you so much.
That paragraph that got messed up is cut off on my paper. That's why I didn't fix it.
Marissa.
Marissa Carreri, aye.
Maren.
Maren Goldstein, aye. Thank you, Shannon, for bringing this to us.
Cindy Kwasinski, aye, and yes, thank you. Great job.
I think Marissa had another resolution she wanted to bring to the table, and I don't know that it's ready this evening, but we could definitely have it for the next school committee meeting. And it's about the start of the fall school year.
That's right. Yeah, I don't think that we can vote on it today because I didn't get it to the group in time for the agenda, but I certainly would be glad to discuss and vote next time. Really, I was following the news about the Amherst School District, which their school committee passed a resolution that indicated the kind of the will and the intention of the school committee to see a full in-person 5-day-a-week full school day opening for the fall of 2021 with acknowledgement of the fact that families are having to make decisions about how they're going to manage childcare and education next year. And so I think it is worthwhile for our committee to have a conversation along those lines and try to do our best to signal intentions to the community about what we foresee and expect for the fall. And just to add one more piece of context, one of the things that Amherst was discussing is that they recognized that their budget will not allow them to offer simultaneously a full-time remote option and a full-time in-person option. And so I think it's useful for us to also kind of have that in mind as we are anticipating plans for next year, that we're going to have to make decisions about what we're prioritizing. Of course, unknown field ahead, but given the direction we're seeing and the importance of really signaling to our community so that way people can, we can offer them good faith opportunity to make choices about how they're going to handle their year next year. And hopefully instill faith that we can offer a full-time in-person program.
I think we can put it on the next agenda, and even if we just talk about it and start to do some sort of working vision, we can begin that work. Okay.
Now, would that be like a work session kind of thing, or is that something that we would do in the during the meeting?
I think the way I see it is a tricky thing to really push. I mean, I totally hope that we are 100% 5-day everybody back in school in the fall. I think it's part of a discussion to talk about, I think it's just, we shouldn't be discussing it now. And if we get very far doing it, I think it's pretty easy for us to push it forward. I don't think it'll take long.
Yeah, so if we already have sort of a resolution to where it uses a framework, and then have from that a jumping off point to be able to make adjustments. Our conversation as a group takes us a slightly different way, then we can always adjust that language in terms of what we
Right.
actually pass.
And I believe Marissa already has a copy of Amherst's to look at. So I think it's a pretty easy conversation to just look at it and make any tweaks that we think we need to do. So yeah, so we'll put it on the next agenda, Sue Colby.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm all set.
Okay, we have just a few matters for action.
Okay, motion to approve school payroll dated 2/11/2021 in the amount of $526,533.94.
We need a
I'd
second.
like to second that. Sorry, I was muted.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Lori,
Laurie Garcia, yes.
Mayor,
Mayor LaChapelle, yes.
Jonathan,
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Shannon,
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Marissa,
Marissa Curry, aye.
Maren,
Maren Goldstein, aye.
Cindy Kuzensky, aye.
Motion to approve accounts payable authorization for payment dated 2/11/2021 in the amount of $97,049.97.
I'll second that motion.
Laurie
Lori,
Garcia, aye.
Nicole,
Aye.
Jonathan,
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Shannon,
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Marissa,
Marissa Curry, aye.
Maren,
Maren Goldstein, aye.
Cindy Kuzensky, aye.
Motion to approve the minutes of executive session February 8, 2021, with those minutes to be withheld until matters are resolved.
I'll second that motion.
Laurie
Lori,
Garcia, aye.
Mayor,
Mayor LaChapelle, aye.
Jonathan,
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Shannon,
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Marissa
Marissa.
Curry, aye.
Maren
Maren.
Goldstein, aye.
Cindy Kuzensky, aye. I'm going to keep the same order. I have the names written down, just so you know.
Motion to approve minutes from the executive session February 15, 2021 to be withheld until matters are resolved.
Second that motion.
Laurie Garcia, aye.
Mayor LaChapelle, aye.
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Marissa Curry, aye.
Maren Goldstein, aye.
Cindy Kuzensky, aye.
Motion to approve minutes from February 9, 2021, also executive session minutes to be withheld until matters are resolved.
Second that.
Laurie Garcia, aye.
Mayor LaChapelle, aye.
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Marissa Curry, aye.
Maren Goldstein, aye.
Cindy Kuzensky, aye.
Motion to approve the minutes from December 8, 2020.
Second that.
Laurie Garcia, aye.
Mayor LaChapelle, aye.
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Marissa Curry, aye.
Maren Goldstein, aye.
Cindy Kuzensky, aye.
That is it.
So does anybody have anything under other? We had an executive session that we do not need now. So you don't have to, you mean you don't want to stay on till 11 or 11:30?
No.
Ah, I'll miss you all.
Why don't you-
So yeah, if there's no other, and we don't need the executive session, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
I second.
All right, here we go.
Laurie Garcia, buenas noches.
Mayor LaChapelle, yes.
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Marissa Curry, aye.
Maren Goldstein, aye. Good night.
Cindy Kuzensky, I have a wonderful night, and thank you, everybody who came.
Thank
Be
you.
well,
Have a good night.
Be
Stay
safe
well.
and be safe.
Ugh.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Cindy.